Chapter 197. I'd love to hear the details. It could be said that Zhang Feng had racked his brains for this matter. He had only thought of the perfection of this matter, but he had forgotten that this was the feudal era. At this time, Lao Li and the others were not here, so he could only ask the old scholar, hoping to see the epitome of this era from the old scholar. After all, the old scholar was the representative of this era, the feudal ideology. In his opinion, it was decadent and stubborn. This matter has to be explained from the top. The old scholar made a fist salute. Although he didn't say it explicitly, Zhang Feng knew that he was talking about the emperor. I don't know where the current emperor came up with this idea. Look, it's a brilliant move. I know he wants to restore the economy of the Tang dynasty, but he did it in a foolish way. He forgot that human nature is greedy. Insatiable greed is the main theme of this era. That's not right, old scholar. Zhang Feng frowned. Look at how simple and honest the neighbors are. Even if someone loses a shoe, they can find it the next day. How can such simple people be insatiable? Haha. The old scholar chuckled coldly. His laughter made Zhang Feng shudder. Of course you'll think they're simple. That's because they're all the same poor. If you put a pot of this in the midst of the poor, try it just like. Look at them, you understand, don't you? The old scholar pointed at the children who were fighting for food. Were they so friendly and harmonious when they didn't have this pot of food? But this thing is rare, and they all dream of eating it. Now you think you're helping them, but you don't know that you're actually harming them. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. How could this be harming them? The old scholar waved his hand, motioning Zhang Feng not to worry. Then he said slowly, I'm not saying that your approach is wrong. On the contrary, you're doing the right thing. Just like that person, your starting point is right. You all want to help the people around you as much as you can, but you have to remember one thing. They're used to being poor. Now, if you give them a piece of meat, they won't forget the taste of meat. On the contrary, when they see the food at home, they can't help but think of your food. They'll do everything they can to win your favor, just to eat your food. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. Was this the bad habit of feudalism? The old scholar continued, actually, it's not their fault. Who asked them to be poor and can't afford to eat meat? Your original intention was to let them satisfy their cravings, and at the same time, let them get some benefits. But you didn't know that under the beautiful dream of sleeping together, there is a filth that can't be hidden. Think about it. When the day comes when you no longer give them meat to eat, what will they do? When you're sick and bedridden one day, they'll even climb onto your stove to steal food. You're spoiling a child and making him go astray. You're making him take a big step on the path of stealing, or even stealing guns. It can't be that serious, right? At first, Zhang Feng agreed and listened carefully. But after a while, the tone of the old elementary scholar's voice changed. He could tell that the old elementary scholar was looking down on these children. That's not right. You're saying that you're a scholar. Although you've read a lot of books, you've forgotten your roots? However, Zhang Feng was silent. Because this was the Tang dynasty, the most prosperous era of feudalism. Everyone valued their status more than their lives. Many people, in order to get rid of their status as slaves, would work hard for generations to do so. They just wanted to get rid of their status as slaves one day, so that their descendants could straighten their backs and be upright people. However, some people were born with a disdain for slaves that came from their bones. However, they had forgotten the meaning of Chao Zhi's poem. Born from the same root, why are we so anxious to destroy each other? Zhang Feng sighed and recited the poem. The old scholar was unmoved. Instead, he tried to persuade Zhang Feng. Fengzi, I know you're ambitious and you want to change, but it's easier said than done. Just like what I said just now, I know you know the meaning of my words. You don't want to argue with me because I'm an old man. But if you understand it, you understand it. This is part of the composition of this era. No one can change the fact. Slaves and commoners. Everyone wants to make their household register noble. They are working hard. If one day the emperor suddenly announces that he is going to distribute the wealth and everyone can get a sum of money, do you think it is fair? Will anyone object? This is going to kill people. The old scholar said it very ambiguously. However, Zhang Feng understood what he meant. This was the tragedy of this era. He forgot this point. In this era of strict hierarchy, if you want everyone to be equal, what is that? That's courting death. I understand, old scholar, thank you. Chapter 198. Zhang Feng fell silent. At this moment he finally knew where his plan had gone wrong. In this era, there was no one who could accept this set of theories of his. If he forced it, it would only make things worse. No matter how rich the emperor was, it would all go into other people's pockets. How much would the commoners get? Even if they got it, what would they do? In the past few days, he had learned a lot from the dog and the rest. 10 taels of silver. They had to repair their houses, buy clothes, make a set of tools to eat, fill the food tanks at home with food, and even return the high-interest money that they had borrowed from their employers. Perhaps he would buy an animal or marry a wife. In this way, was there still a surplus of 10 taels of silver? No more. Moreover, at this moment, they were only at the beginning stage of reaching the standard of living, but at this moment, they had to face the problem of returning the money. Although they were motivated and had stimulated their spending, this was simply not the case. In the short term, nothing could be seen, but in the long run, the commoners would have to bear even more burdens. This was the root of the evil in this era. The endless repayment of money would make a person numb. Then, from the motivated actions, they would become numb and depressed. Then, they would return to their previous state. And at that time, their lives would be even more difficult and strained. Initially, Zhang Feng wanted to revive the economy and make the people more motivated and motivated. But now, it seemed that he had no choice. He had thought too much. And in this way, how could the government take back the money? He had thought too much. Zhang Feng could not help but want to slap himself. He finally understood why the old scholar said that this was not helping people, but harming them. This was a king knife that he had handed to Lao Li. This was terrible. He hoped that they had not created a huge hole. Otherwise, it would not be as simple as losing his head. At that time, Zhang Feng would really become a street rat. Old scholar, thank you. I understand. Zhang Feng sighed deeply. The old scholar chuckled and didn't say anything. On the contrary, he looked even happier. Eating the braised intestines was like drinking water. By the way, old Xiaotsai, you don't look like an ordinary person. Why don't you become an official? Moreover, wasn't the emperor looking for talented people? Why did you? I'm old. The old scholar shook his head. This old man is 73 years old this year. If I were 10 years younger, this old man might enter the tiger's den to fight, but I'm old now. In the old scholar's eyes, there was an unconcealable sense of vicissitudes. He seemed to be reminiscing about the glory of the past. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be even more curious. From your accent, you seem to be from Yuzhou. Why are you? Zhang Feng seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly opened his eyes wide and said in shock, "You are the former Qin." Cough, cough. Hearing this, the old elementary scholar's eyes flickered with an intimidating light. The ancient aura emanating from his body caused Zhang Feng to feel somewhat oppressed. At this moment, Zhang Feng was shocked. Although he usually laughed with old Xiaotsai and could tell from his words that he was extraordinary, at this moment, he seemed to have suddenly opened a door to a whole new world. He was shocked. There were not many records of the Qin dynasty in history. It was all related to Emperor Yang of Sui. After he destroyed the Qin dynasty, the palace of the Qin dynasty was basically reduced to ashes by his looting. When he destroyed the Qin dynasty, Yang Guang's bloodlust terrified everyone. Basically, all the ministers and generals of the Qin dynasty were killed by him. That was how the history of the Qin dynasty was researched in the future. There were only documents in the ancient tombs and unofficial records. However, right now, there was a powerful person from the Qin dynasty in front of him. How could Zhang Feng not be shocked? Where was this place? This was Chang'an City. No one knew how long the old elementary scholar had lived in compassionate and peaceful alley. Although the courtyard was big, it had basically collapsed. If not for the money and effort of the neighbors, he would have been fighting with beggars to live in a rundown temple. However, Such a person was actually a member of the former Qin dynasty. Zhang Feng was 100% sure that this guy's status in the former Qin dynasty was not low. Otherwise, how could he be basking in the sun so comfortably in Chang'an city? He would have been sent to the quarry a long time ago. Seeing that Zhang Feng was silent, the old elementary scholar smiled faintly. Are you afraid of getting to know me, a remnant of the former Qin dynasty? Are you thinking about how to cut ties with me? T. Zhang Feng could not help but roll his eyes. You're the old elementary scholar who writes letters, couplets, and palmistry. What do you mean by the former Qin dynasty? Ha! You're also a genius. The old elementary scholar laughed. But everything was in his words. That's enough. Drink your wine. I'll smash all the wine tomorrow. Whoever wants to drink will have to pay. Boys, eat to your heart's content today. Lao Tzu will collect money tomorrow. Chapter 199. Just as Zhang Feng and the old scholar were joking around, Li Shimin was worried sick. He woke up early in the morning and was in a good mood. He wondered if he should go boating with the Empress in the Imperial Garden. But at this moment, Wei Jing arrived. Along with Wei Jing were several officials. They entered the Imperial study. A large group of people surrounded Li Shimin. Your Majesty, the Marquis of Luozhou sent a report saying that there's a big mess in Luozhou. A few merchants took advantage of the loophole and borrowed all the money from the cooperative. I know. Why are you so alarmed by such a small matter? No, they took advantage of the loophole and said that they would only return the money after a year. They even lent out 5 million taels of tax. Li Shimin, who was drinking tea, suddenly spat it out. He stared at the people from the Ministry of Revenue in horror and asked with a trembling voice, How much? 5 million taels. And it's from brothels, gambling houses, wineries, and other merchants. They borrowed all the money in batches. What? Bastards! Someone come. Pass down my decree, behead these vile creatures. Execute all 9 generations. Li Shimin threw his teacup in horror and roared furiously. Return the money after a year? What the F***ck? Everything had turned cold. Brothels? Brothels borrowing money for what? Do they lack money? Gambling houses? I've turned a blind eye to this matter and pretended not to see it. Do you really want to jump out and show me? Fine. I'll show you today if I dare to kill. Guards! Your Majesty! Wei Zheng hurriedly blocked Li Shimin and said, Your Majesty, you can't kill these people. They borrowed the money according to the normal procedures. I've checked all our documents and they didn't break the law. It's my negligence that I miscalculated. Wei Zheng's words were vague, but Li Shimin knew that he was talking about him. Li Shimin wanted to explode. However, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. What should he say? This was all due to his carelessness. Li Shimin was angry and said impatiently, What about you? If you have something to say, then say it. If not, then scram. Emperor. Please take a look at these memorials first. Wei Zheng handed over 3 booklets to Li Shimin with both hands. Li Shimin opened the report with a gloomy face. When he saw the report from Liang province, his eyelids twitched violently. Tens of thousands of commoners had surrounded the provincial governor's office and demanded money? How could this be? Then, Li Shimin opened the report from Chang'an city. Although there was no encirclement, several pawnshops opened by the royal family were forced to close down. How could this be? Where did the problem come from? We remember that Brother Zhang Feng said it very clearly. What exactly went wrong? Li Shimin's heart ached at the thought of so much money going down the drain. It hurt so much that he twitched. Prime Minister Wei, what's going on? Why did this happen? Li Shimin's expression was extremely ugly. Now, in the imperial study, no one dared to breathe loudly, but they didn't go out either. They just refused to leave. It was as if they would squat here for the rest of their lives if they didn't give an explanation. This made Li Shimin even more embarrassed. You said to kick them out. They weren't wrong in this matter. Li Shimin couldn't help but point the finger at Wei Zheng. Right? It was all Wei Zheng's fault. He didn't do a good job. Wei Jing seemed to have sensed Li Shimin's intention. His eyelids twitched violently, and he hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, Lord Zhongsun and I have discussed this matter carefully. No one is wrong in this matter." "So you mean that I was wrong?" Li Shimin was unhappy. "Wei Jing, if you don't give us a satisfactory answer today, we will exterminate your entire family. All of you leave us. We will discuss this matter with Prime Minister Wei once we have reached a conclusion. Also, immediately send word to the various regions to put this matter on hold." Yes. Once everyone had left, Li Shimin asked, "How did this matter end up like this?" "I'm not sure, but I've read through our documents carefully. There's nothing wrong with them. Your Majesty, you've seen it too." From Marquis Ho's point of view, he thinks that there's a problem at the root. "Oh? What does Ho Junji mean?" Li Shimin's eyes widened. "Marquis Ho said that we forgot one thing from the beginning, and that is the restrictions on the household registration of the people, and there are no rules on who can borrow and who can't. Furthermore, there are no clear rules on the arbitrary nature of repayment, so this old subject carefully studied the documents and discovered a flaw. It was written on the last page of the document." Li Shimin hurriedly flipped through the documents on the table and began to carefully read them. He really did see a problem at a time like this. On the last page it was written as follows. "If the amount of silver exceeds 1 million, the repayment date will be reduced to 1 year. Just this one rule had allowed so many people to take advantage of it. This made Li Shimin have the urge to vomit blood. 1 year, tens of millions of silver. Gone just like that? How does Prime Minister Wei think this matter should be resolved?" "This?" Wei Jing had asked. Wei Jing couldn't help but begin to shift the blame. "Your Majesty, the person who tied the bell needs to untie it. This old subject believes that it is time to leave the palace." Chapter 200. "Then, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and accompany me out of the palace." "Your Majesty, then, what should we do outside? Everyone is waiting outside. Moreover, several big banks in Chang'an and city have been scared out of their wits after learning about this situation. If we don't solve this problem, it will cause panic." Li Shimin thought for a moment. He waved his hand and asked Xiao Gizi to change his clothes. Then he said, "Send a message to the Ministry of Revenue to restore order in Chang'an and city as soon as possible. Tell them that the banks will be open as usual tomorrow morning. Moreover, this matter must be reported by someone. The government must not intervene. Strictly guard against Honglu Temple. If there are any suspicious people, arrest them." "Yes." After that, Wei Jing hurried out to settle the matter outside. Li Shimin, Xiao Gizi, and Wei Shuyu, who had been waiting outside for a long time, hurried into the depths of the harem. After dealing with the matter at hand, Wei Jing hurried to Li Shimin's place to meet Li Shimin. Then he hurried to Zhang Feng's tavern. But now, Zhang Feng was very worried. He seemed to have gone too far with the words he said to scare the children. However, he could not spoil them like this. At this time, he was squatting at the door, thinking about how to deal with this group of children. He was bored, so he sent the children to inquire about the situation in Chang'an and city for him. Before, he had felt that Chang'an and city was full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The streets were full of beards, and there were even Tubo people who smelled of rank meat. Now, he actually saw a kind old scholar who was always smiling in his tavern. At the thought of the old scholar, Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and cursed in his heart. What time was it? It was the Jingguan period of the Tang dynasty. Who the F***ck cares about your previous identity? Moreover, if Chang'an and city wanted to investigate you, they would have found out long ago. Do you think that if you don't say anything, the people from the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Revenue won't dig into your background? Was there a need to be so secretive? Isn't he just a descendant of a great Confucian scholar from the former Qin? Do you think that the imperial court doesn't know about such a trivial matter? Are they stupid enough to let an old man like you wander around blindly under their noses? Do you think they're stupid? Truly, rotten wood cannot be carved. After cursing in his heart for a while, Zhang Feng's expression became serious again. The matter of the cooperative was a big deal. As for those kids, he didn't have a headache for the time being. He was just afraid that more and more of them would gather, and that would be troublesome. Fortunately, it seemed that the commoners were rather shy. Other than Go Zi and a few others, if anyone saw their children running to the tavern, they would break their family's legs. There was no other reason. He was just afraid that they wouldn't be able to repay this favor. The people of the Tang dynasty, especially the people from Guangzhou, valued favors. If they took advantage of a little, they would keep it in their hearts for the rest of their lives. They would always think about when they could repay the favor so that they could stand up straighter. However, they wouldn't be able to repay Zhang Feng's favor. That was too much. That wasn't it. After the group of children and the old scholar left, Zhu Zi's father and old he, who Zhang Feng didn't allow to set up a stall, plunged into Qinling Mountain and tinkered with a big wild boar. This was a big deal. After dealing with the investigation of the officials and the taxes, the two of them carried 2 slices of pig hind leg meat and threw it into Zhang Feng's tavern without any explanation. At this time, the 2 slices of bloody hind leg meat were on the table in the tavern. Zhang Feng was so worried that he didn't know what to do. On such a hot day, you want to braise it and give it to Zhu Zi and the others? How could you give it to them? When he thought about it, he was thinking too far ahead. Zhang Feng sighed, got up, and went into the tavern. He looked at the pork and rubbed his stomach. He couldn't help but have an idea. He took out his self-made barbecue rack and started to grill the meat in the tavern. Since he had nothing to do, he decided to fiddle with the food to calm himself down and think about what had happened recently. Just as Zhang Feng prepared the dogwood, pepper, and salt, and cut the meat into palm-sized slices, Li Shimin and Wei Zheng came in. As soon as they entered the tavern, their eyes lit up. "Oh, looks like I came at the right time." Zhang Feng, who was grilling meat, was stunned when he heard the voice. He slowly raised his head and saw Li Shimin looking at him with a smile. "Oh, old Li, King thought you were in jail. Why are you here?" Li Shimin's face darkened when he heard that. "So, you can't wait for me to go to jail, can you?" Zhang Feng laughed. "So good. What I want to say is that you're finally here. Lao Li, if you didn't come, I was going to hold up your portrait and put up posters all over Chang'an City." Li Shimin was shocked when he heard that. If the posters were to be put up, what would happen? He hurriedly asked, "Are you in trouble? Do you need a bodyguard?" When Zhang Feng heard that, he glanced at Li Shimin with disdain. "So, you want to send your son who knows martial arts to be my bodyguard?" Chapter 201. Li Shimin could not help but drool as he watched Zhang Feng cook the barbecue. The spiciness of dogwood made him salivate. However, he was not immersed in the delicious food. He asked, "Who else wants to be your bodyguard?" "Who else can it be?" "Old son, of course. He's been beating around the bush several times. He wants to send his precious son here. I'm not stupid. Why would I look for trouble?" "Old son." Li Shimin glanced at Wei Zheng. The threat in his eyes was strong. However, Wei Zheng did not seem to see it. He only stared at the barbecue and drooled. He was almost squatting on the ground and waiting. "It's okay. I'll talk to him later. However, I think if you need a bodyguard, just tell me. Besides, isn't this small tavern of yours a little too?" "Okay. I'll tell you when I think about it. Come, try the barbecue this time. See if there's any difference." Zhang Feng had spent a lot of effort to find all the spices, especially the substitute for chili. In the era of China, there was no such thing as chili. Everyone liked pepper and wild pepper. As for dogwood, which could replace pepper, very few people used it. However, ever since Zhang Feng found cinnamon and other spices by chance in the medicinal shop, he was happy. He could finally find a trace of modern life in the Tang dynasty. Li Shimin was also interested. The barbecue he had eaten before was delicious, but it was all pork and mutton. However, this time, looking at the big fan of meat on the table, it turned out to be wild boar. He did not know where Zhang Feng got it from. Anyway, Li Shimin had not eaten this for a long time. Now that he saw it, he could not help but reminisce. "Brother Zhang Feng, why is the meat so fragrant this time? Did you figure out some spices again?" Wei Zheng's nose was really good. He sniffed the bottles and cans and immediately smelled something different. "More or less. I found a few tonics in the medicine shop. I had nothing to do, so I tinkered with them. I felt that the taste was not bad, so I mixed them into the dish. I didn't expect that the dish would really become delicious. Zhang Feng responded. He was too lazy to say anything. In any case, everything they ate was cooked in one pot. There was nothing delicious about it. Besides, what could he do even if he did? He had to waste his saliva again, and he also had to prevent these goods from running away. Although these things were not expensive, they were difficult to deal with. A moment later, a large tray of meat was prepared. Li Shimin and Wei Jing didn't hold back either. They grabbed the meat and started chewing on it. While eating, Li Shimin asked excitedly, "I didn't expect you to be doing so well in this alley." "I'm all right. But Lao Li, it seems like you're really fine." When Li Shimin heard this, his face immediately turned green. "So, you just want to see me make a fool of myself?" "No. It's just that I heard that there's a big problem with the cooperative this time." When he heard this, Li Shimin was no longer in the mood to eat. When he heard Zhang Feng say it so bluntly, he couldn't help but sigh. "Brother Zhang Feng, this time, Lao Li was scolded badly by Lord Zhangsan. Tens of millions of taels of silver are gone just like that. I heard that the emperor is very angry. Tell me about this." When Zhang Feng heard this, he pursed his lips. "Now you know your mistake, right? I knew that you guys would make a mistake. After you came up with the plan, why didn't you ask more questions? I don't know if old son told you to use your brains more? Now that I've offended the emperor, it's hard for me to become an official." Zhang Feng pretended to sigh. When Li Shimin heard this, his face turned red. What else could he say? He suddenly felt that he was floating. At that time, if he had thought about what Zhang Feng said about using his brains more, he wouldn't have ended up like this. He was too hasty. Li Shimin sighed. Looking at the table full of roasted meat, he no longer had any appetite. He lowered his head and drank bowl after bowl of wine. Wei Zheng was the same at this time, but he didn't drink. "Lao, could it be that you're also involved in this matter?" It was more than just being greedy. Li Shimin nodded heavily. "Yes, I basically threw in all my spare money, and so did they." Li Shimin pointed at Wei Zheng. Zhang Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes. "You deserve it. Why don't you think that I don't know that you businessmen shouldn't borrow money recklessly? If you had thought more, you wouldn't have done the same as those Huang. Now, the emperor's private bank has been forced to close, and the emperor is being laughed at. You can just wait to be beaten." When he heard this, Li Shimin's eyes twitched violently. He had forgotten that the Turks and Tubo people were causing trouble now. What should he do now? It wasn't easy to come up with a solution to deal with this crisis. If he ruined it just like that, wouldn't they laugh at him? "Brother Zhang Feng, you're also involved in this matter. I invested a share in your name, so don't think that you're innocent. You have to think of a way." "Hey!" When Zhang Feng heard this, he instantly exploded. "Good for you, old. You really know how to use things on the spot. You've caused me so much trouble." Chapter 202. This was King Unbearable. Zhang Feng was going crazy in his heart. He knew that Lao Li and the others had good intentions. From the water wheel incident last time, he could see that they also wanted him to make more money and get in touch with that layer of relationship. But this time, it was different. Li Shimin did not expect Zhang Feng to have such a big reaction. He hurriedly pressed him down on the chair and put his arm around his shoulder, saying, "Brother, good brother, don't worry, don't worry. I also know that with your talent, you will definitely enter the palace in the future. We have taken so many benefits from you, and we feel guilty in our hearts. So we thought about letting you be in the limelight for the first time. At least Zhangsun Wuji and the emperor will remember your name. This way, no matter what you do in the future, it will be good for you. We don't want anything to go wrong. But now that something has gone wrong, we don't want it to go wrong either. Don't worry. As brothers, we still have this. Don't be afraid. When the time comes, if this thing goes wrong, Lao Li, will take care of it for you." Zhang Feng heard this and felt a little better. "Good brother. Actually, there is still a way to solve this matter." "Oh. Is that true? Really? We are brothers. Since I can say this out loud today, do you think that Zhang Feng, have no way to solve it?" Zhang Feng was infinitely pretentious. He looked at Li Shimin contemptuously and said, "Actually, you have made a big mistake. But actually, you are not wrong in this matter." Li Shimin and Wei Jing scratched their heads in confusion and stared at Zhang Feng like curious babies. "What do you mean we are wrong? What do you mean we are not wrong? You should be clearer. What the F***ck do I know what you are talking about?" Li Shimin was almost driven crazy by Zhang Feng. Yet, this guy was still leisurely eating barbecued meat right now? Li Shimin couldn't wait to pick up the big brush full of peppercorns and ruthlessly draw a line on Zhang Feng's face. He was too F***king despicable. Alright, I say that's enough, right? Zhang Feng was finally defeated by Li Shimin and Wei Zhang's resentful eyes. He slowly said, "Actually, you did the right thing. Do you still remember Long Yudao's advertisement about the locust eggs?" "You mean," Li Shimin seemed to have understood something. He had learned his lesson and immediately asked, "You're talking about using the method of creating public opinion to spread this matter? But if I do this, won't I still not be able to recoup my capital? Moreover, the matter had not been resolved yet. What kind of method is this?" "That's right, brother Zhang Feng. What you're doing won't help us in the slightest." Wei Jing also asked. This matter was already like this. Why would they let it spread? Wouldn't that mean that the Tang dynasty would be in chaos? Not only that, how would they deal with the conspiracy of the Turks? Wasn't this a joke? "You're really," Zhang Feng said speechlessly, "I don't even know what to say to you. You're losing money because your business is not big enough. If I didn't know you well, who would believe that you're doing business? You're doing business? Tell me honestly, what do you do? He doesn't look like he's cut out for business." Zhang Feng spread his hands. He looked at Li Shimin and Wei Zhang. Seeing the embarrassed look on their faces, he said, "Actually, I really think that you're not doing business. You're doing good deeds. I really don't understand. How can you do business in Chang'an city like this?" "Ahem. Brother Zhang Feng, tell us about it. We've never come into contact with this kind of thing." Li Shimin touched his nose and said. Zhang Feng glared at him. "Then why are you still saying such things? How can you even say such things? So, you really don't want the money, do you? What I'm trying to say is that everything you're doing right now is actually to promote this matter." "Now, enough publicity. What do you mean?" Li Shimin's eyes lit up. He knew that Zhang Feng was about to get to the point, so he asked hurriedly. "Actually, you don't have to worry about this matter. I think that before tomorrow, the storm of this cooperative will be suppressed by His Majesty. Think about it. His Majesty must know about this, and the money is spent on him. Now, the Tubo, Turks, and others are staring at him. Do you think His Majesty won't be anxious?" "I'm very anxious. Who said I'm not anxious? Just tell me, what should we do about this matter?" Li Shimin urged. Zhang Feng clinked his wine bowl, and Wei Jing tactfully filled it for him. Zhang Feng sipped his wine slowly and said, "The best thing to do now is to wait." "This matter can wait?" Li Shimin and Wei Jing exclaimed hurriedly. Zhang Feng waved his hand, motioning them to sit down. Then, he said mysteriously, "To be frank, if I were His Majesty, I wouldn't care about this matter now. Let this matter brew for 3 more days. Let this matter brew for 3 more days? Brother Zhang Feng, are you crazy?" Chapter 203. Otherwise, how could he say such a thing? Let this matter fester for a few more days? This day, even 2 hours, couldn't wait. In this case. Then the Turks would jump out, thinking of this. Li Shimin and Wei Jing couldn't help but look at each other in horror. They exclaimed in unison, "Do you mean that you want to use this matter to eradicate the foreign spies in Chang'an city?" They didn't rebel, nor did they agree. Instead, they hurriedly made a gesture to keep quiet. "You're really stubborn. This matter has to be done quietly. Why are your loud voices louder than Elder Chen's? Let me tell you, this matter won't attract the Turks' attention for the time being. On the contrary, they will hide at this time." Zhang Feng finally felt a little relieved. These 2 guys finally knew the usefulness of using their brains more. Finally, what he said to Elder Sun last time was not in vain. Li Shimin was dumbfounded after hearing Zhang Feng's words. This is a rare opportunity to eliminate the spies from the other races. If we give up just like this, won't it be more difficult to find them? Are you stupid? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes at them and said, if you are spies, what will you do when Chang'an city suddenly erupts? Will you be silly enough to stick your head out and wait for people to chop it off? Do you think that the spies of the Turks and Tubo are all stupid? Alas! Zhang Feng sighed, rubbed his forehead and said, actually, what you said is a little related. But if I were that emperor, I would definitely not take action at this time. Wei Zheng and Li Shimin exchanged glances. They asked, Brother Zhang Feng, do you mean that the emperor wants to cast a long line to catch a big fish? Look Lao Li, look at Lao Wei. Learn from others. This matter is actually like this. The emperor will definitely not make a move at this time. What is this called? AIO had alerted the enemy by beating the grass. According to the art of war, this is a great taboo. The best strategy is to plan before taking action. That's a long story. Let's talk about the matter at hand first. Zhang Feng thought for a while, trying to think of words that they could understand. Then he said, actually, what happened this time was indeed wrong. The only mistake is that the matter this time is too small. If it were me, I would spread the net across the entire Tang dynasty. Li Shimin curled his lips and muttered, what are you talking about? Just a few provinces have already spent an entire year's worth of taxes. If all of the Great Tang was like this, what would the Great Tang eat? What are you talking about? When Zhang Feng heard this, he immediately exploded. He got up, put his hands on the table and said, let me tell you, this matter is very profound. It's something that you can't understand at this stage. This is why you can't do business well. Don't ask. Asking is being stingy. Think about it. If you can't bear to part with the child, how can you trap the tiger? Right? To put it simply, he's not wrong in this matter. That's how it should be. That's why I said that this matter needs to be prepared for 3 days. 3 days is enough for some people to know about this matter, and they can't sit still. What will happen if the people can't sit still? Of course, they'll go and see if this matter is true. Then, they'll think about whether to borrow some, and then let this matter spread among their relatives and friends. Zhang Feng's mouth was dry, while Li Shimin and Wei Zheng were stunned. When it was over, while Zhang Feng was drinking to moisten his throat, Li Shimin looked at Wei Zheng, who was sometimes pulling his beard and sucking in cold air, and asked, Old Wei, do you understand? No, this old man is stupid. If this matter happened in other places or other businesses, it might really be a novel innovation. But what was this? This was gambling with the fate of the Tang dynasty. Did Li Shimin dare to do it? Of course, he didn't dare to. When this matter happened, everyone's first reaction was how to cover it up, not how to make a big deal out of it. If this matter was made big, then wouldn't the Tang dynasty really be in danger? But the two still suppressed the doubts in their hearts. After all, they were businessmen at this time, and Zhang Feng only gave his answer from the standpoint of a businessman. They also wanted to know how Zhang Feng would arrange this matter. What was his plan? At this time, after drinking a bowl of wine to moisten his throat, Zhang Feng put 3 pieces of roast meat on the plates of the 3 people, and said while eating, let me tell you, if you think the worst about this matter, then you're really wrong, and you're really narrow-minded. Tell me, what on earth happened in Chang'an and other places? Although he didn't go out, he had many eyes and ears, so it was not surprising that he knew this. After hearing this, Wei Zheng said, according to Lord Zhang's son, in 3 days, Chang'an city consumed 30 million taels of silver, and in Luozhou, Liangzhou, and other places, the total consumption was about 23 million taels of silver. Hearing this, Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. So little. This is the annual tax of these 3 places? Chapter 204. Li Shimin almost spat out the wine in his mouth when he heard that. That's not enough? Brother, that's almost a year and a half's worth of taxes collected by these places. Just this alone has almost caused the economies of these places to collapse. Do you know what will happen if the money is leaked out? This will only cause economic chaos in the originally stable areas. Prices will skyrocket for a short period of time, but after that, prices will fall into a relatively weak phase. Wei Jing analyzed seriously. This was the best result they could come up with. What kind of place was Liangzhou? Liangzhou was connected to Tubo or the western regions by Longyu Road. It was also an important economic and trade center of the Turkic Khaganate. If something went wrong here, it would be a huge problem. However, Zhang Feng shook his head. I know that Liangzhou, Luozhou, and Chang'an are the most suitable places for the cooperative because they are the closest to Chang'an. Moreover, they are the places where trade from the north, south, east, and west must pass through. That's why we have to do this. Besides, what kind of chaos will this cause in 3 days? Perhaps the emperor has already come up with a countermeasure. However, since your industrial center is in Longyu, I'll use Liangzhou as an example. Zhang Feng could not stand the look in Li Shimin's eyes. How much of the millions of taels of silver in Liangzhou have been distributed? Did Zhang Sun Wuji tell you? Well, oh wait, tell me. When Li Shimin heard that, he nudged Wei Zheng, who was playing dumb. After all, Wei Zheng was Wei Zheng's cousin. After all, he would only know more than him, the emperor. Wei Zheng had no choice but to bite the bullet and say, Liangzhou distributed about 80 million taels of silver. About 6 million taels of silver went to brothels, gambling houses, restaurants, and other places. The common people and small businesses shared the last 2 million. So little? Liangzhou's taxes are so little? I thought Liangzhou could share at least 10 million taels of silver. Zhang Feng was very surprised. As the starting point of the Silk Road, the prosperity here basically supported 1/3 of the economy of the Tang dynasty. But how could it be so little? Cough cough. Brother Zhang Feng, this is not bad. Do you know how many people there are in Luozhou? Even old Duke Hojunji was only able to take out 6 million after exhausting everything he had. Liangzhou took out 8 million, so it should have been able to hold on. Then, how long can Luozhou last? Zhang Feng asked. 1 month at most. Hearing this, Zhang Feng slapped his thigh. Enough. If it's me, then, stop talking nonsense. Let's get down to business. We're in a hurry. Li Shimin was so anxious that he wanted to strangle Zhang Feng to death. As for this guy, it was as if he hadn't said anything at all. How could this not make Li Shimin roar in his heart? I want to strangle you. Cough cough. But seeing Li Shimin so anxious that his eyes had turned red, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel puzzled. What's this guy so anxious about? Even the emperor isn't anxious, so what's a small merchant like you getting anxious about? Your little business in Longyu province is probably only as big as a butt, right? Zhang Feng seriously suspected that this guy might have revealed everything. Otherwise, why would he be so anxious? But since Lao Li can't wait, then let's talk about the benefits of this matter. First, let's see why I'm saying this. All of you can put your hearts into your stomachs. Since I'm saying this, it's clear that the hermit has a brilliant plan to solve this matter. First, of the 8 million taels of silver in Liangzhou, more than half of it went into the pockets of the brothels, right? If you old Li were the emperor, what would you do for us? If it were me, I would get the silver back. Li Shimin seriously thought for a moment before replying. If that's the case, wouldn't you be breaking your promise to the world? Then what should I do? I can't just let them take advantage of me like this, right? They didn't take advantage of me for nothing? Zhang Feng scratched his head and said, Who said that they took the money for nothing? Do you think it's that easy to take the money from the government? Then what do you think we should do? Li Shimin spread his hands. He didn't care anymore. Zhang Feng heard this and shrugged. It's easy to take the money, but he has to spend it. Think about it, if you get so much silver for nothing, do you have to pay taxes? If you get so much money for nothing, do you have to spend it? Do you have to renovate the brothels? Do you have to recruit Huji? Do you have to get in touch with the government again? Tell me, when did Zhang Sun Wuji decide to return the money? Zhang Feng asked. Wei Jing hurriedly said, 1 year later, 1 year later, I'll pay you back in 10 years. What? Which idiot decided on this? Was it the Ministry of Works? Or someone else? That's AF** King Idiot. When Wei Jing heard this, He stole a glance at Li Shimin, whose face was alternating between red and green. He hurriedly looked down at his nose and said nothing. Li Shimin clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. I want to strangle you. Chapter 205. Li Shimin wanted to point at his own nose, grab Zhang Feng's collar and say, "This idiot is me." But after thinking for a while, he still wanted to be thick-skinned. If he told others about this, he would probably be laughed at for the rest of his life. But, you're awesome. You're showing off. After you enter the palace, I'll play you to death. Brother. Ahem. Brother Zhang Feng, you're too much. Wei Jing coughed and then continued, don't talk about it. Be careful of your head. Yo. Now you know that your head is more important. Zhang Feng looked at Wei Jing with some curiosity. Why did you always like to inquire about it before? Now, okay, I'll talk about this loophole. Is there any way to make up for it? Li Shimin asked hurriedly. No. Zhang Feng shook his head. Li Shimin was disappointed. He said that he was awesome. Was there no way? But at this time, Zhang Feng said in a low voice, although I don't know who made up this loophole, but this matter, although it seems a little strange, he did do a good thing. Hearing this, Li Shimin's eyes suddenly lit up. Wasn't he talking about him? This time, it seems that all the money has flowed into the pockets of those merchants, and it's from places like gambling houses. But think about it, they will return it sooner or later. Will he be able to take out these things from the gambling house and bank after accepting the money? Li Shimin was puzzled. If you said that it was a brothel, there was a slight possibility. But how could he return the money from the gambling houses? Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. Don't worry. I said that it was a brothel. Let's talk about the details. They accepted the money and they even signed it. That's right. Although they took advantage of the loophole, we also have countermeasures, right? This money is the emperor's. Even if it has flowed into the pockets of these people, it is still the emperor's. Li Shimin agreed with this point. Zhang Feng said again, this money. If he didn't, he would just be a piece of trash. Since he took it, let him take it. How are we going to take it back now? We'll have to do some research. Zhang Feng pondered for a while. If this matter was in modern times, then it would be better to handle it properly. However, this was ancient times, and it was the Tang dynasty, the most prosperous era of feudalism. This was a bit of a strenuous task. Zhang Feng pondered for a long time and said just as Li Shimin was about to explode. How about this? If I were that person, I would treat it as a gift. But this gift has to be carefully chosen. Think about it. What would they do if they took the money? You know how to expand your business. Well, if that's the case, give him a rectification document. You want to open for business. Just you wait. Give him a year and a half. If he wants to open for business or secretly run it, Zhang Feng smiled slyly. Li Shimin, who was listening carefully and pondering, couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. I say, brother Zhang Feng, can't we stop being so flustered? You'll scare people to death like this. Zhang Feng smiled and toasted Li Shimin with a bowl of wine. Li Shimin then asked, if you do this, won't they not dare to spend the money even if they have it? They can't spend it? Won't they be anxious? They are anxious. Just wait for them to be anxious. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and said, as long as they are anxious, then things will be easy to handle. You can ask them to fork out some money, and then you can open for business. Fork out money? Wei Zhang and Li Shimin heard this and couldn't help but speak in unison. Think about it, they borrowed 1 million yuan as a minimum, right? Then, you can ask the provincial governor to do something about it. If they want to open for business, fine. Wait for the documents from the higher-ups. If they can't wait, then fork out money. From tens of thousands of taels to tens of thousands of taels, it's up to you. This way, won't you make up for the difference in price you lost? Wei Zheng was furious when he heard this. Brother Zhang Feng, you're helping the evildoer do evil. Think about it, this official is already a little vague. At this time, you're asking him to publicly use the messenger's authority. Aren't you harming others by doing this? You mustn't do this. Fine, fine, fine. Zhang Feng was speechless. Even the emperor isn't anxious, but you're a businessman. What are you anxious about? Listen to me first, okay? This is one of the methods. The second method is to restructure the business. As long as you can get the Ministry of Works to restructure the economic system in the market, all the property rights will have to go through the government's investigation. At this time, if you introduce other businesses, will they just sit and wait? They'll definitely see that if they can't do this, then they'll go back to do other things. After all, this money has to be returned. Moreover, if the government does this, as long as they're not fools, they'll know that this money is burning and they'll definitely think of other businesses. In this way, things will be easier. Zhang Feng went one round in circles. Li Shimin was completely dumbfounded. He was confused by Zhang Feng's words. At this moment, his eyes were dark as he asked, "That's it? But who said that it's over? This is just the beginning." Chapter 206. In fact, the first thing was to give the money. Zhang Feng was just saying it for fun. If old Li and the others really dared to do this, he would immediately pat his buttocks and flee. This was a big crime to kill him. However, after seeing old Wei's indignant look, Zhang Feng finally felt relieved. In fact, when he knew that this matter had gone wrong, he had already thought of a solution. However, this thing was a little shocking, so Zhang Feng was not sure if it would work. Therefore, he took a big detour and explained the matter clearly. At this time, seeing that Lao Li and Old Wei seemed to understand a little, he said, "There is something that I don't know if you have heard of it? Have you gone to buy vegetables?" Li Shimin and Wei Jing shook their heads. Zhang Feng did not expect them to understand. In this era, if a man went to buy vegetables, he would be laughed at. Then he asked, "Have you gone to buy wine? When you buy wine, if you are short of a penny, if it is a familiar shopkeeper, will he say to make up for it next time?" "Yes, we have." Wei Zheng and Li Shimin nodded. "Then let me ask you again. When you do business, do you give money after receiving the goods? Or do you give some benefits when the goods are sold?" "Yes, we do." Li Shimin and Wei Jing nodded again. They did not understand. This was something that every businessman would give. It was also called a gift. Are you thinking of using the business method to get all the money back? Wei Jing asked doubtfully. "No. Am I, Zhang Feng, such an unscrupulous businessman? Am I that unscrupulous?" Zhang Feng pointed at his own nose. Li Shimin and Wei Jing nodded seriously. This made Zhang Feng feel a headache. If he wasn't black-hearted, would he have created such a meticulous plan? This plan had now been quietly launched. It was fatal for the entire Tang dynasty and its surrounding countries. It meant that Zhang Feng's words had already firmly controlled the lifelines of these countries in the hands of the Tang dynasty. However, this was just the beginning, and the results had yet to be seen. Zhang Feng was a little speechless. In the end, he opened his mouth but didn't say anything. "All right, let's continue. Just pretend I didn't say anything, okay?" Zhang Feng shrugged and said, "Actually, this is a small favor between merchants or acquaintances. For example, if you eat wontons for a month, even a small stall vendor will give you a few more wontons or a side dish." What is this? This is their subconscious, as if they want to hold on to these customers. What if we expand it 100 times? Let's take this matter from the merchants to the common people. These are all things in their subconscious minds. What do you think will happen? Li Shimin was shocked. Wei Zheng's face couldn't help but suddenly freeze. Zhang Feng continued, "Think about it. Take my small tavern as an example." Zhang Feng pointed to the side dishes on the table and said, "If I reduce the dishes every time, and then give some side dishes to the customers after they come, do you think they will be grateful? Take the butcher who sells meat for example. If you buy 3 caddies of meat, the butcher will give you a pig bone. Is this a way to win business? Take the grain shop for example. If you buy 1 caddy of brown rice, and after paying the bill, you give him a handful of rice. What do you think will happen at that time?" I know you will definitely say that it may be good if there are only 1 or 2 people, but if there are many people, won't the merchants lose money? Li Shimin and Wei Jing nodded thoughtfully. Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "No. You're wrong. Although it seems that there are some losses in this period of time, but this little loss is not enough for that rat to steal food. But this handful of rice, a side dish, and a pig bone, what is that? That's the foundation for his long-term business. The commoners, after receiving the favor, feel that the merchants have given them face. The honest commoners, next time when they buy rice, meat, or even go to the tavern, what will they do? They will still go to the same place that gave them a bargain. But that's because no one is greedy from the bottom of their bones. They only covet a little bit of kindness, but they've fallen into the trap of the merchants. At this time, do you still think that the merchants are losing money? Zhang Feng smiled slightly and looked at the shocked faces of Li Shimin and Wei Zheng. He said again, this is only one of the methods. The other method is to let the business of the merchant have repeat customers, and the people will always use this small favor as something to show off. They will flaunt it everywhere. This way, the merchant will have an endless stream of customers, right? And this is all because of this little favor. And this little favor is the first way to stimulate consumption. It is also to take advantage of the commoners' greed, so that their business will never have to worry about customers. It seems that there are losses in a short period of time, but compared to the commoners' discussion, that little loss. Li Shimin was shocked. Zhang Feng's words made his blood boil. He wanted to roll up his sleeves and be a merchant right now. However, at this time, Wei Zheng asked, what does this have to do with the cooperative? No matter how I look at it, these two things are unrelated. Chapter 207. Although Zhang Feng was talking about a battle of words, did it have anything to do with solving the current crisis? Could it be that brother Zhang Feng was drunk? Otherwise, how could he not know about this? Li Shimin could not help but patiently advise Zhang Feng to give him a lecture. Brother Zhang Feng, the current situation is that there is a crisis in Chang'an, Liangzhou, Luozhou, and other places. Now we have to think about how to remedy it and earn back the money. That is the key. Although what you said is good, it has nothing to do with the current situation, right? That's right, brother Zhang Feng. Think about it again. How should we deal with this matter? The gate of our mansion is blocked by people. Li Shimin and Wei Zheng's repeated bombardment did not make Zhang Feng have a trace of repentance. Instead, he waved his hand and pretended to be mysterious as he pinched his fingers. Seeing this, Li Shimin couldn't help but want to beat this guy to death. I pinched my fingers to calculate. Don't calculate. Say it. Li Shimin urged. Zhang Feng closed his eyes slightly and looked solemn as if he was really pinching his fingers to check. This made Li Shimin's head spin. Why was this guy so similar to that old faker Yuan Tiangang? But this action, this guy was deliberately mystifying things. I pinched my fingers to calculate. This matter is still related. Is it related? It has nothing to do with it. I think it has nothing to do with it at all. Li Shimin roared. Yes, it does. Think about it. What was the cause of this incident? Is it because of the cooperative? If so, it will be easy to deal with it. How can it be easy to deal with it? Wei Zheng signaled Li Shimin not to be anxious with his eyes. But even if his throat was hoarse, Li Shimin did not care about him. Instead, he was forced to drink several bowls of wine by Zhang Feng and dozed off at the table. Basically, only Li Shimin and Zhang Feng were sober at the table. Basically, Li Shimin did not drink much. How could he be in the mood to drink? Now he was almost worried to death. He could foresee the scene in the political announcement hall tomorrow morning. Zhang Feng didn't intend to tease him anymore. He said, everything happened at the same time. Think about it, if you borrowed millions of dollars from the government, and then the government asked you to close down for rectification, but didn't say when you would reopen, all your plans at this time would be put on hold, right? Li nodded. That's right. Then that's it. If you're burdened with so much money and you don't know what the government is planning to do, then at this time, if someone were to use the method I just mentioned to change their profession, or directly use the method I mentioned to do business, what do you think his voice would be like? Li Shimin said with a frown, if that's the case, some of the people have just received money, and they will definitely buy it. If there is a preferential policy at this time, I will definitely make the business more popular. But what is this coupon? Is it the benefit of the rice you said? But it is also a wrong understanding. Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. Looking at this, Li Shimin could not wait to pick up this kid and beat him up. Zhang Feng coughed and said, "This coupon is equivalent to a kind of voucher issued by the government, similar to the previous banknotes. Starting from the government's bank, not only will it get rid of the current shortage of money, but it will also make the government's voice more popular. More importantly, you only gave out a piece of paper. Moreover, you didn't pay a single cent, and all the money from before came back to life. This voucher? What the hell is this?" Li Shimin was getting more and more confused by Zhang Feng's wild and imaginative narration. He hurriedly stopped him and asked him to explain properly. This kind of thing seemed like money falling from the sky. Zhang Feng slapped his head, and only then did he remember that this was the Tang dynasty. If the people here knew what a voucher was, then they must have seen a ghost, or they must have met a time traveler. All right, let me tell you about this voucher. Actually, this thing is just like what I said before. It's similar to delivering rice or bones. For example, if I were a businessman and I urgently need to deal with a batch of things that are about to go moldy, or I need to attract business, what would I do? I would think of a way immediately. A way that would catch everyone's attention. For example, today, you ate 3 jars of wine and 3 caddies of wild boar meat. In total, it's about 5 taels of silver. Everyone knows this account, right? However, if I give you something issued by the government when I take your 5 taels of silver and ask you to bring this with you the next time you come for a meal, will you take it? Let me give you an example. If you are a butcher who sells meat and you have a voucher issued by the government, will you use it? Whoever doesn't use it is an idiot. And this money, you only need to deduct it from his sales tax. This way, the more he earns, the more tax you get. Not only that, but you will also attract more businessmen who want this voucher. You can charge me for this voucher. The premise is that no one meets the loan conditions. For example, a voucher worth 10 taels needs to be paid 5 taels, but you only issued a piece of paper. As for the rest, I won't say anything, right? When Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Shimin opened his mouth wide and looked at Zhang Feng in a daze, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. Chapter 208. Li Shimin was completely dumbfounded. Although Zhang Feng was talking about a business model, it could be seen that once such a business model was launched, the income tax of the Tang dynasty would increase exponentially. In that case, Great Tang's tax revenue alone would double. Not to mention, this fellow had directly stimulated the depressed economy of Great Tang. Moreover, he only needed to issue an imperial edict and then publish a notice in the Ministry of Revenue's coinage department. It was that simple. However, there was still a problem that troubled Li Shimin. That was, did the current cooperative still need to continue? Li Shimin couldn't help but ask again. Brother Zhang Feng, I understand what you're talking about. You're stimulating the entire economy of the Tang dynasty? Let the economy, which was originally weak after the war, completely recover because of this matter? In that case, does this cooperative still need to continue? Do we still need to lend the money of the common people and merchants? Of course. Why not? Don't you want to earn money? Are you stupid? No, who is it? Zhang Feng said mysteriously, if I were that person, not only would I lend, but I would also collect money. Collect money? How do you collect money? Li Shimin asked in surprise. He even kicked Wei Zheng, who was pretending to be asleep. Wei Zheng then pretended to wake up leisurely. He had to pretend that he didn't know about this matter. Otherwise, he was not Zhang Feng. If there was even the slightest deviation in such a confidential matter, then therefore, he could only pretend to be drunk. Everything would be solved. But now, he didn't even have a chance to pretend. It seemed that the emperor had to find a scapegoat. And the protagonist had become this scapegoat. Wei Zheng cheered up and carefully remembered the conversation between the two in his heart. Zhang Feng said, actually, think about it. I've already given you the answer. And didn't old Sun show me the pattern of the banknotes drawn by Fang Xianling? This is the way. Nowadays, whether it's the Tang dynasty or the outside world, people use carriages to carry coins to buy and sell things. Isn't it tiring? But at this time, if this thing appears in the Huang manner, we can let the merchant store the money in the Huang manner. Think about it, how much money will the emperor's treasury accumulate in a short time? This is the most important part of the cooperative. Buzz. Li Shimin's head exploded. It turned out that the reason he had borrowed the money was because of what Zhang Feng had said, you can't trap a wolf without risking your child. Were they waiting for him here? The more Zhang Feng spoke, the more excited he became. He did not see the exchange of glances between Li Shimin and Wei Zheng. Now do you understand why I want to borrow money and why I said that you were wrong and right? If it were me, I would like to lend out the entire Tang dynasty. Think about it. You've just done something and the money will return to your pockets. Not only that, but it will also bring you a lot of interest. Then, you can lend the money out continuously. It's like a rolling snowball, rolling bigger and bigger. What do you think of this method? This, Brother Zhang Feng, now I really want to pry open your head and see if it's the same as ours. This? How did you think of this? This is a secret. Zhang Feng smiled slyly. This is not the end. They won't give you the money for free. At this time, you can also add some interest. It's like they're lending you the money. This time, Li Shimin and Wei Zheng were dumbfounded. How did it become us borrowing money? In that case, didn't we do all this for nothing? Zhang Feng waved his hand slightly. You don't understand, do you? What kind of interest are you lending out now? Ahem. It's not us. It's His Majesty. His Majesty is lending it out. Wei Zheng reminded. The interest of the money lent by His Majesty is set at 1 tael of silver. In general, it's 1 tael of interest per year. In the Tang dynasty's currency decimal system, 100 copper coins were equal to 1 tael of silver. 10 taels of silver were equal to 1 tael of silver. In other words, 1,000 copper coins were equal to 1 tael of silver. The interest of 1 tael of silver was not low. The ordinary people in the Tang dynasty, including the people in Chang'an city, only earned about 10 to 20 copper coins a day. It could be seen that the interest of 1 tael of silver was equivalent to 10 days' income. It could be said that it was high, but it could also be said that it was not high. After understanding the currency system of the Tang dynasty, Zhang Feng said, the interest of 1 tael of silver is about the same. The problem is the interest of 1 tael of silver. If you lend it out, it's 1 tael of silver. But if you deposit it with you, you're a fool. Li Shimin rolled his eyes. How could he be so stupid? However, Zhang Feng grinned again. You can also use the calculation of merchants. What calculation? The interest of 1 tael of silver is unchanged. Maybe it can be increased a little later. That depends on their ability to borrow money and the purpose of borrowing money. If it's a merchant, it's not too much to add 1 tael of silver to the interest. However, the interest of deposits is also divided in this way. From low to high, but the highest interest must be half of the interest of the loan. Chapter 209. Li Shimin was dumbfounded. Wasn't this the usual method used by banks? What was the use of bringing up such an old story? There was no need to do so, was there? If he were a businessman, would he take out the money he had stored in the cellar? No way. They wouldn't care about such a small amount of interest. Brother Zhang Feng, all the banks are doing this now. Do you think they would be stupid enough to keep their money in the imperial plantation? Moreover, the banks in many places are different. I know. These are not controlled by any one person. These are controlled by the dukes or the big families. For example, the 5 families and 7 families. I said before that it's a centralized power. Could it be that you've forgotten what I said? The reason why the emperor believes in your lame trick now is because I believe that he has wanted to do this for a long time. But if you do this, I said something before. Have you forgotten? You mean the banknotes? Wei Zheng asked cautiously. That's the thing. Think about it. Now, this thing does exist, but it is not confirmed by the government at all. In other words, it is recognized. If this is not recognized by everyone, then the evidence in your hand will be a piece of waste paper. But if His Majesty personally issues an edict to exchange all the coins for such a thing, what do you think will happen? One is a thing that no one knows if it will change tomorrow. The other is a hard currency with legal effect. Which one do you think is safer? Are you willing to carry boxes and carts of bulky money to buy and sell? Or are you more willing to carry dozens of banknotes in your arms and live freely? Well, Li Shimin was a little excited. He had wanted to do this for a long time, but there was no other way. He was short of money. However, because of some things, he put this matter aside. But now that he thought about it, if he did it at that time, the effect would not be as good as it was now. Once this thing was made in the teeth of the storm, not only would the currency of the Tang dynasty be under his control, but he would also be able to hoard a large amount of foreign money. Anyone who wants to do business in the Tang dynasty, I'm sorry, but please exchange for the most popular currency in the Tang dynasty. All right then. In this way, even to the outside world, money would flow into the Tang dynasty sooner or later. Was he still short of money? At that time, he would only complain about having too much money. Thinking of this, Li Shimin's eyes were spitting fire. He couldn't sit still for a moment and hurriedly got up to leave. But Zhang Feng held him down. Lao Li, are you panicking again? This has nothing to do with you. Think about it. This is a problem that even I can think of. Even until now, Chang'an has not fallen into chaos. What does this mean? This means that the emperor has already thought of a countermeasure. Just stay calm and steady. But Li Shimin wanted to explain, but Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Today, let's drink. It's rare to see such good wild boar meat. I believe that even you can't eat so freely like this, right? There was something before, so you couldn't eat to your heart's content. Now that things are settled, let's eat freely. Otherwise, it won't be fresh tomorrow. Come on, Old Wei, let's drink." Ding. After clinking the wine bowl with Old Wei, Zhang Feng turned around and went to roast the meat in a daze. While roasting the meat, Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin, who was sitting on pins and needles, and said, "I know you're anxious, but believe it or not, if you go to your Lord Zhang's son now, you'll definitely be refused the door." Li Shimin was dumbfounded. When he went to see Zhang's son Wuji, he always just had to say a word, and Zhang's son would immediately come to see him. How could he be refused the door? If you go to see Zhang's son Wuji now, you'll be leaking the emperor's secret. Think about it, would he dare to see you? With that little money of yours, it's fine if you lose it, but I guarantee that in less than half a month, Lao Li's mouth will be grinning from ear to ear. At that time, you'll be worried about how much money you have. It's better to think about how to spend this money. Li Shimin was too embarrassed to leave, so he simply let go of his stomach and ate. After knowing about this matter last night, he really didn't want to eat or drink. Just now, he was forced to drink a few bowls of wine, and his stomach was empty. Now, he was panicking with hunger. He couldn't help but ignore it. As long as he could deal with this matter, he might as well eat to his heart's content. While eating, Wei Zheng and Li Shimin were whispering something. Zhang Feng was also crazily roasting meat. In the summer, it was not a good idea to store the meat. He wanted to roast all the meat tonight and then bake it into jerky. This wild boar meat was good stuff. Although it was a little rough, if it was made into jerky, it was not much different from butter jerky. Moreover, in this era, who wanted to eat beef? Dream on. Zhang Feng was still thinking about whether or not to sell this thing called barbecue. This could be considered an additional source of income. Brother Zhang Feng. It's not early today. Just as the afterglow of the setting sun shone in the small tavern, Li Shimin stood up and put an ingot of gold on the table. With Wei Zheng's support, he dizzily clasped his fist. He was about to leave. Seeing this, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Wait." Chapter 210. In the end, Li Shimin and Wei Zheng each carried a large pile of barbecued meat and a large piece of wild boar meat and walked out of the small tavern. Out of the small tavern, Wei Shuyu hurried forward and removed the burdens from their bodies. Li Shimin breathed a sigh of relief. When he saw Wei Shuyu drooling while staring at the greasy oiled paper, he immediately frowned. "If you want to eat, eat my food." With the emperor's permission, Wei Shuyu hurriedly carried Wei Zheng's barbecued meat and hurried away, leaving behind a few imperial guards who were staring at Li Shimin with red eyes. "Prime Minister Wei, what do you think will happen if we do as Brother Zhang Feng said?" "Emperor, Lao Li, I think it's feasible. After all, the current situation is no longer up to us. There's no other way. Moreover, as you can see, the situation in Chang'an city is very complicated. Everyone is watching us, whether it's the imperial court or the foreign tribes. They are all eyeing us covetously, waiting for us to make a mistake. Alas! How could I not know? Brother Zhang Feng, Prime Minister Wei, do you really believe that there are immortals in this world? Before getting into the sedan chair, Li Shimin looked at Wei Zheng and asked. His question hit Wei Zheng right on the spot. In this world, would there really be immortals? Hadn't the emperor always been strongly against this kind of thing? Why would he ask this question today? Could it be because of Zhang Feng? There are great sages in the marketplace. Wei Zheng glanced in the direction of the small tavern. In the afterglow of the setting sun, the small tavern had been rendered as mysterious as a palace. However, he knew that this was the most inconspicuous place in Chang'an city. It was in such a place that there was such a person. Even Wei Zheng couldn't find a thorn in his words. This was what Wei Zheng feared the most. It wasn't that Wei Zheng had to find something from Zhang Feng to feel comfortable. On the contrary, it was precisely because of this that Zhang Feng became so mysterious. While chatting and laughing, he had made all the foreign tribes that had been troubling everyone fall into the Tang dynasty's trap. Who else could do that? Only the legendary immortals could do that, right? Everything was under his control as he chatted and laughed. What kind of heroic spirit was this? Zhang Feng had yet to enter the palace or the imperial court, but his performance was already so outstanding. Wei Zheng couldn't help but feel a little worried. If there was a day when Zhang Feng became an official in the imperial court, even with the few of them around, they would not be able to guarantee his safety. The imperial court was a place full of murderous intent. Zhang Feng's temper was so bad that he couldn't stand the slightest provocation. Was he really suitable for the imperial court with such a temper? But if he was not suitable for the imperial court, where would he go? If such a talent hid in the mountains and returned to the mortal world because of this, the Tang dynasty would suffer a great loss. Alas! It seems that Brother Zhang Feng has made the right choice. But when will His Majesty let him enter the imperial court? Wei Zheng sighed. In the end, he followed the sedan chair and entered the depths of the palace again. Taiji Palace, Imperial Study. After a brief discussion with Fang Xianling and the others, Li Shimin entered the bedchamber with the help of Xiao Gizi and the others. At this time, it was already 9 o'clock in the morning, but Zhang Sun Wugo was still embroidering the upper of a pair of shoes meticulously, needle by needle. It seemed that this was a pair of men's shoes. The bright yellow shoes were embroidered with 2 rusted dragons playing with a pearl. A top-grade pearl was cleverly wrapped in the dense needle and thread, as if a real dragon had come back to life. Li Shimin quietly dismissed all the palace maids and eunuchs, and personally put the barbecued meat wrapped in oil paper on the table. Then, he took out the fine wine Zhang Feng gave him and gently filled 2 glass cups. The aroma of the meat and the temptation of the fine wine finally woke up Zhang Sun Wugo, who was immersed in the needle and thread. Looking at Li Shimin and the delicious food on the table, she sighed slightly. It seems that second brother has gained a lot tonight. Have you solved this matter? Nothing can escape the eyes of Maid Guanyin. Li Shimin shook his head and patted the chair beside him with his right hand. Maid Guanyin, come and drink with me. Empress Zhang Sun smiled, put down the needle and thread, and walked to Li Shimin's side and sat down. Looking at the delicious food, she said, I really want to see what kind of young man this is. This barbecued meat, why does this concubine feel that it smells even more tempting than Hunyang Mohu? You will see. Sometimes, I really want to get up and tell him that I am the emperor. Second brother, are you still hesitating? Li Shimin nodded heavily. I don't know, second brother, you think too much. In fact, there is a famous saying in Buddhism, follow fate. You and Zhang Feng are coincidentally like this. In my opinion, everything should be left to fate. What do you think? Leave it to fate, Li Shimin muttered, and then no longer spoke. He only ate the barbecued meat and drank the fine wine with Empress Zhang Sun, and did not speak any more. When the gong of the night watchman sounded, Li Shimin sighed softly and hugged Zhang Sun Wugo's slender waist. Mei Guanyin, go to sleep. Chapter 211. Dong, dong, dong. The morning bell that signaled the start of the morning court rang in the imperial city. It was also known as the imperial bell by the people of Chang. When the bell rang, the sky had just turned bright, which was equivalent to 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning in modern times. The bell also became the bell that signaled the merchants in Chang and city to get up and open for business. When the bell rang, the officials had already crossed the Vermilion Bird Bridge and walked into the main hall of the political announcement hall. Today was no different from the past. All the officials held the white jade tablets in their arms and walked without saying a word. But today was different. This feeling was a warning in everyone's heart. Yesterday, everything that happened in Chang and Luozhou, Liangzhou, and other important trading places of the Tang dynasty was still known to all the officials. And today's morning court was destined to be a difficult battle. At this time, Wei Zheng, Zhang Sun Wuji, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and Cheng Yaojin walked side by side in the front. But when they felt something strange behind them, they acted as if nothing had happened. Although Cheng Yaojin was illiterate, his lifetime of military experience had made him see a clue from the patrolling imperial guards and the actions of the Jinwu guards. All the generals present knew this, but they all kept their heads down and didn't say a word. Cheng Yaojin glanced at Zhang Sun Wuji and the others. Finally, he sighed, lowered his head silently, and followed the crowd to the 99 steps of the political announcement hall. It seemed that the emperor had made up his mind last night. Today's political announcement hall, Cheng Yaojin could only silently mourn for the decadent diehards in his heart. Entering the political announcement hall, there were 18 big pillars in the hall with relief sculptures of coiling dragons on them. Oil lamps had already lit up the magnificent hall, but it looked a little dilapidated. Even the red sandalwood on the 9 steps to heaven's stairs under the emperor's dragon throne was obviously damaged. There was no money. This was all because of money. Cheng Yaojin glanced at the ministers who were staring at them with unfriendly expressions and snorted coldly in response. Not long after, when everyone was in position, Xiao Gizi's croaky voice rang out from behind the dragon throne at the entrance of the back hall. His Majesty has arrived. Officials, kneel and welcome. Everyone fell to their knees in unison, hugging the white jade tablet and shouting, "Long live the Emperor!" Rise. Li Shimin clasped his hands behind his back. No one could tell if he was happy or angry. After he sat down on the dragon throne, an official stepped forward and announced, "Your Majesty, this subject has something to report." Li Shimin waved his hand. Approved. Your Majesty, there was a large-scale riot in Chang and city yesterday, and there were even faint signs of people rioting. Under the feet of the emperor, such a thing is a great crime of disrespect. This subject requests Your Majesty to investigate this matter thoroughly, give the people an explanation, and prove the dignity of the Tang dynasty. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Then, how do you think this matter should be dealt with? Who does the Ministry of Works think is behind this? Is it an outsider?" Your Majesty, this subject has investigated this matter. It is not an outsider, but a member of our court. Li Shimin calmly glanced at Zhang Sun Wuji, who was frowning, and said, "Tell me, who is behind this and what is their purpose?" Your Majesty! The official of the Ministry of Works hurriedly knelt on the ground, and then several other officials knelt and said, "This subject has been investigating this matter since yesterday, and found that this person has illegally expropriated the tax revenue of the Tang dynasty and used the imperial plantation to make money, which forced the imperial plantation to close down. Yesterday, this subject found out from the Chang and county government, officials at all levels, and merchants who benefited from this matter, which has caused dissatisfaction among the merchants in Chang and city. Most of the merchants are waiting for this matter to make a fortune." Li Shimin waved his hand and interrupted the man's words. He asked, "Jin just heard that someone was using the imperial plantation to wantonly amass wealth. Why are there merchants waiting here to make a fortune? If you don't tell me what's good or bad, Jin will definitely punish you for deceiving the emperor." When the crowd heard this, they were shocked. They hurriedly said one sentence after another. In the end, they really told the whole story. It seemed that this group of people was really fast in the face of benefits. Usually, when they were asked to investigate the tax revenue, they would delay it for a month or so. Unexpectedly, they were so concerned about this matter. Li Shimin smiled slightly. No one knew what he was planning to do. After waiting for a while, most of the Confucian officials were filled with righteous indignation. Your Majesty, this person's intention is to be punished. Now that all the clans are gathered in Chang'an, if this scandal is exposed, the Tang dynasty will lose face. Your Majesty, stealing tax revenue is a serious crime, which is punishable by 9 exterminations. Your Majesty, please punish this person to correct the law of our country. Your Majesty, Li Shimin's face gradually darkened. He shouted, Then, the person you are talking about, is it me? Or someone else? Chapter 212. Li Shimin's sudden outburst caused everyone to shut their mouths. Everyone who had knelt down to beg for their lives remained kneeling on the ground, trembling all over, unwilling to make a sound. Li Shimin slowly walked down the 9 steps stairway to heaven with a wave of his sleeve. When he arrived at the top of the hall, everyone hurriedly bowed, not daring to even breathe loudly. When Cheng Yaojin lowered his head, he couldn't help but open his mouth. This group of idiots, who else but the emperor could bypass the Ministry of Works and directly mobilize so much tax money from the imperial plantation? Are your brains used to vent your anger? This is such a simple question, even I can understand it. Are you all pretending to be stupid? Just as Cheng Yaojin was calculating how many people would die in the end, the Minister of Works, Hokan, stepped forward and knelt on the ground, saying, Reporting to the emperor, this subject has something to report. Li Shimin put his hands behind his back and walked to Hokan's side. He looked at Hokan with a smile that wasn't a smile and said, Hokan, we still remember that on the 12th of last month, we gave you a document to report the tax situation of Chang'an last month and the current state of the treasury. Now, have you found it? Your Majesty, Hokan's forehead was covered in a layer of fine white sweat. He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, this matter is complicated, and there have been many outsiders recently, so this subject still needs half a month. Half a month? Good. Li Shimin's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked down at Hokan and asked, We thought you would give us a list today, but we waited for another matter. Then we want to ask you, do you also want to report me? As he spoke, Li Shimin's expression suddenly became serious. He looked around and said, Then we want to ask, who else wants to report me? Li Shimin's shout instantly made Hokan tremble. He hastily knelt down and said, Your Majesty, this subject does not dare. The result of our investigation is that Zhang Sun Wuji is Zhang Sun Wuji. Taking advantage of his status as the empress' older brother, he went to the Chang'an imperial plantation alone the night before last. This subject has already interrogated the people in the imperial plantation. Everyone saw Zhang Sun Wuji. I beg your Majesty to punish Zhang Sun. Your Majesty, please punish Zhang Sun Wuji. At this moment, all of the people kneeling on the ground began to make their reports. However, some of the ministers felt that something was amiss. When Zhang Sun Wuji heard this, not only did he not lose his head out of fear, his expression remained the same. What was going on? Could it be? Everyone seemed to think of something. Hurriedly, he secretly observed Wei Zheng and the others. As a straightforward minister, if he encountered such a situation on a normal day, he would definitely stand up immediately. Why was he still as calm as usual today? Even Cheng Yaojin, that fool, was secretly laughing? Why did Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and the others still look the same? Could it be that they were all involved in this matter? Or, in the end, all the ministers' gazes converged on Li Shimin. Could it be that this was really the emperor's doing? That was right. In the imperial plantation, the only person who could instruct the imperial plantation, other than the Ministry of Works who had the emperor's personal document, was the emperor himself. Could it be that Zhang Sun Wuji went to the imperial plantation that night because he received the emperor's secret decree? The more they thought about it, the more they felt that it was possible. At this moment, the emperor was looking at Hokan with a playful gaze. I once heard that the people in the marketplace said that the people in the imperial court were all good-for-nothings. Other than eating and waiting for death, they only know how to scheme against each other and fight for their own little interests. I didn't believe such rumors before. After all, they were false. Previously, I gave you the document, Hokan, and asked you to immediately send me the taxes of Chang'an last month and the money in the treasury of Chang'an City. However, until today, I received the answer that this matter was complicated and that it would take another half a month. However, I want to ask you, the hundreds of good people in the Ministry of Works reconciled the accounts word by word and came to a conclusion in 3 days. Yesterday, such a big thing happened in Chang'an City. But you have already investigated it clearly in less than a day's time. Then I want to ask you, Hokan, do you admit to your crime? Your Majesty, please spare my life. Your Majesty, please calm down. Lord Ho also did it for... Shut up. Li Shimin waved his sleeve. Do you think I'm that easy to fool? I want to ask you, is it wrong for me to want to see the money in my house? I want to know if all this is in the way of your interests, Hokan. Or you, Hokan, have embezzled the money in the treasury of Chang'an City? I remember it clearly. Since last year, it was clearly recorded in the report that the treasury of Chang'an City was more than 3,970 silver. Why did I ask Zhang Sun Wuji, the minister of the Ministry of Justice, to find only 31 million silver last night? And in the past few months, the taxes of Chang'an City were basically postponed. Did the remaining taxes go into your pocket or someone else's? Your Majesty, please spare my life. I didn't leave my post without permission. I just secretly used some money for the birthday of the retired emperor. Li Shimin smiled playfully. He waved his hand and said, Zhang Sun Wuji, tell me the result of the investigation of the Ministry of Justice. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhang Sun Wuji stepped forward with a cold face and said loudly, since March this year, there should be about 60 million silver in the treasury of Chang'an City. Chapter 213. What? How can there be so much? Oh my God. Why did the Ministry of Works announce that there are less than 40 million taels? Where did the remaining 2,000 taels go? Oh my God. The taxes in the treasury are the lifeline of the Tang dynasty. Your Majesty, it's a capital offense. This is a capital offense. Hokan panicked. Under the reprimanding of the ministers, he hurriedly explained, Your Majesty, the taxes are there. I just haven't sorted out the accounts yet. Enough. Zhang Sun Wuji smiled coldly. Lord Ho, I believe you were preparing to fill the hole yesterday, right? After all, it's only been half a year. With your ability to embezzle more than 10,000 taels of tax under the emperor's nose, you definitely can't fill it up in a day. Half a month. In your document to the emperor, you said that you needed half a month. I believe you were planning to fill the hole in half a month, right? But did you forget that the emperor would suddenly want to check the treasury? Zhang Sun Wuji looked at Hokan indifferently, then knelt on one knee and took out a bill from his chest. He said loudly, Your Majesty, I have a copy of the accounts of Hokan's various businesses in the past 3 months. Please take a look, Your Majesty. What? The Ministry of Justice actually found evidence of Hokan's crimes. If that's the case, doesn't that mean a capital offense? A capital offense. How dare you, Hokan? Do you still want to quibble? Take advantage of the fact that His Majesty hasn't gotten angry yet and quickly admit your mistake. Perhaps His Majesty will spare your death sentence for the sake of Marquis Ho. Wei Jing raised his Buddhist sleeves and scolded Xiao Gizi as he handed the bill to him. Lord Ho, admit your crimes. Otherwise, you will really have your entire family executed. Lord Ho. Hokan, the ministers of the Ministry of Works and those who had connections with Hokan, or even those who had business dealings with him, panicked and hurriedly asked Hokan to admit his crimes. Your Majesty, I admit my crimes. Of course, Hokan knew that if this booklet was opened in front of Li Shimin, what awaited him would be the execution of 9 generations of his family. In the end, Li Shimin did not open the booklet. He waved his hand indifferently. Jinwu guards. Send Ho Kan to the Supreme Court and have him wait for interrogation. He knew that if the investigation continued, more than half of the people kneeling on the ground would deserve to die. But now, he knew that if he killed all these people, then it was also very difficult for him. Actually, he knew that the booklet Zhang Sun Wuji handed over was not evidence of his crimes. How could he have the time to investigate within a day? To be able to find out the amount of money deposited in the treasury overnight had already expended a large number of people. If they continued to investigate, then, forget it. Since Ho Junji was involved, Li Shimin could not bear to do it. With a wave of his hand, he dejectedly said, "Ever since the founding of the Great Tang, we know that many of you have strived so that the Great Tang can walk out of its current predicament, but how could we not know that everyone has their own selfish motives? We have never asked about these matters. Why is that? For the sake of face. After the Wei River, the foreigners have always been eyeing our Tang dynasty covetously. We also know that this meager amount of money is a little tight for all of you. Thus, we have always turned a blind eye to your businesses. Why did we do this? This subject is guilty." How could the officials still dare to stand after hearing this? They hurriedly kneeled on the ground, and some of them even wanted to cry out loud. But who was really crying and who was faking it? Only the benevolent could see benevolence. Li Shimin did not say anything. As if he did not see the officials, he continued to speak as if he was sleep-talking. "Actually, how could we not be worried about this matter? Do you know that because of this matter, every night when I wake up in the middle of the night, I think that the court robes you all wear are all made of the best golden silk? Do you know how much effort we have put into feeding the people of the Tang dynasty? What kind of place is the treasury? It is the lifeline of our Tang dynasty. You dare to touch it? What is the difference between you and those foreign barbarians? You are gnawing on the flesh and blood of the people of our Tang dynasty." Li Shimin looked up at the political announcement hall and pointed at it. "Come and take a look. This is the political announcement hall of our Tang dynasty. It is the place where we issue every order. Look, are they more dilapidated than your study?" The officials all bowed their heads and did not dare to make a sound. They all knew that His Majesty was furious because of this. But, even so, we have never thought of repairing the palace. It is not that we don't have money, nor that we don't want to repair it, but we don't want to waste it. Li Shimin lifted his dragon robe and pointed at the boots on his feet. "This is made by my empress, the empress of the Tang dynasty. She sewed this stitch and thread for me. But tell me why. You just want to save a little money for the Tang dynasty and let the people have more money, right?" Li Shimin's voice suddenly turned cold. He shouted angrily, "But there are always some of you who think we are fools." Chapter 214. Your Majesty, I deserve to die. Everyone was terrified. They hurriedly kowtowed again and said they didn't dare. Li Shimin waved his hand. "In fact, I can see it whether you admit it or not. But since you all want the good of the Tang dynasty, I'll treat you as a fool in your heart. But don't really treat me as a fool. You all know the consequences." Li Shimin waved his sleeve and returned to the dragon throne. He took a sip of tea and said lightly, "Fang Xianling." Fang Xianling, who was in the crowd, got up and bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty. Once Ho Ken is gone, you'll temporarily take over the position of Minister of Works and immediately thoroughly check all the accounts of the Ministry of Works. I'll give you half a month. If you can't clean up the Ministry of Works in half a month, I'll punish you severely." "Yes, Your Majesty." The resignation was over. Some people had a hunch about this result, but some people felt uncomfortable at this time. For example, the other officials of the Ministry of Works thought they had the possibility of promotion after the emperor ordered to kidnap Ho Kan. But Fang Xianling came out of nowhere. How could they not be angry? But they only dared to be angry in their hearts. They really didn't dare to say it out loud. After settling this matter, Li Shimin continued, "Today, I know you're all here for the affairs of Chang, and Luozhou and Liangzhou. I understand. But as I said, this is my decree and it is also my test. Your Majesty, I wonder what Your Majesty wants to test with the chaos in Chang and city at this time? Your Majesty, now Chang and city is in complete chaos. No one wants to make a living. If this goes on, it will be chaotic. Li Shimin waved his hand. Wei Jing, you say it. Li Shimin's mouth was dry from talking. Ho Kan's matter made him furious. If he didn't investigate it, he wouldn't know. But after a little investigation, such a big mess happened. Moreover, the money borrowed from the treasury was basically borrowed from Ho Kan's family or collateral relatives. What was this? This was stuffing his own pockets. Taking control of the Ministry of Works was the most important part of this plan. If the Ministry of Works did not interfere, then this plan would be perfect. He did not expect Ho Kan to be such a good stepping stone. When I needed you, you appeared on your own. Very good. Very good. Just as Li Shimin was planning how to deal with this matter perfectly, Wei Jing had already told him the whole story in detail. Apart from everything about Zhang Feng and the layout of the surrounding countries, he only talked about all the benefits of this cooperation. At this moment, gasps could be heard from time to time in the court. His Majesty spent a lot of effort on this matter. One midnight, he was enlightened by the heavens and came up with a set of methods to fully recover the economy of the Tang dynasty. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you don't have any questions, Minister Wei. Prime Minister Wei, this old subject has something to ask. Me too. Prime Minister Wei, isn't this banknote a little too simple? If a calligraphy master copied it down, wouldn't it mean that the Tang dynasty would be irreparably shaken? Once this is implemented, wouldn't it mean that all the currencies circulating in the market need to be replaced and reformed? That won't happen. Wei Jing shook his head. This matter has no conflict with the existing currencies at all. On the contrary, the banknote that replaces the currency is even more unduplicable and fair. When the time comes, the coinage department of the Ministry of Works will use the latest printing technology. Even if others want to imitate it, they won't be able to. About this matter, in 5 days, Old Man will bring the sample for all of you to have a look. Wei Zheng and Li Shimin really did not think of this matter. But now that someone had asked, Li Shimin could only pretend that he knew everything. Wei Jing nodded to himself. Wei Jing could only do as he was told. He knew that this matter would definitely require Zhang Feng to write it down. At this time, another official asked, Prime Minister Wei, this matter is of great importance. Should we stop all the turmoil and wait until after the Emperor Emeritus' birthday celebration? No, this matter doesn't need to wait until after the Emperor Emeritus' birthday celebration. This matter is already in progress. Are you talking about the loan from Chang'an a few days ago? Then, do you mean that the loan will continue? Wei Jing nodded. He said to the person who had just spoken, that was just an experiment by the emperor. First, he wanted to see if there were any loopholes in the vaults of these important economic areas. Second, he wanted to let this matter brew for a while. The money still needs to be lent out. Not only that, from tomorrow onwards, the imperial plantation will officially accept deposits. What? Deposits? At this time, everyone was finally shocked. It turned out that this was the biggest plan. This was equivalent to the emperor spending tens of millions of taels of silver to put all the merchants' money into his own hands. Although the low interest rate was low, it was still the emperor's imperial plantation. If one held the banknotes of the imperial plantation, what would it mean? It would mean face. Moreover, the imperial plantation belonged to the emperor. It was safer and more reliable than any other bank. Even if one was traveling from Chang'an and to the northernmost border of Hebei province, as long as one held the banknotes of the Tang dynasty's imperial plantation, one could exchange the corresponding amount of money at the government office or the bank opened by the government. It was much safer than dragging a large amount of money out in a carriage. Moreover, there was interest. As long as one was not a fool, one would choose to do so. The emperor's move was really ruthless. Seeing that no one objected, Li Shimin and Wei Jing looked at each other, then stood up majestically and asked, Is there anyone else who objects? Chapter 215. At this time, everyone was immersed in their own money. Who would be crazy enough to oppose the emperor's words? This was a good thing. As long as the money was deposited in the imperial plantation, not only would it be fireproof and burglarizing, but it would also earn interest. For people like them who had countless assets, who would dare to oppose it? There would definitely be people who would dare to tear them apart in the court. And it was obvious that the emperor had been planning this for a long time. Who would oppose it at this time? Wait for the same fate as Ho Kan. Thinking of this, in the hall, there was a burst of chaotic discussion. For the first time, Li Shimin felt the heroic feeling of strategizing. Last night's talk. Suddenly, Li Shimin thought of a way to make quick money. That was to start from the court. Which of the hundreds of officials present didn't have hundreds of mu of land? In Chang'an city, who didn't have a few properties? However, as the saying goes, the higher you stand, the less courage you have. At this time, there was a way for them to deposit their money in the imperial plantation without worrying about the danger of fire or theft. Who would dare to oppose it? Thinking of this, and looking at the people in the hall who were getting more and more excited, Li Shimin said again, "And for this first experiment, I plan to not care about the identity of the depositor. Even if he is a slave, even if he saves a penny, I will personally give him a token. The person who has this token can enjoy the highest standard of treatment. And if he borrows money from a loan, I will waive the interest for a year." Not care about identity? There was such a token? Everyone was shocked. Hurriedly, someone asked excitedly with a red face and neck, "Your Majesty, how many tokens are there in total? If there are too many, won't it cause chaos in the world? The taxes of the Tang dynasty won't." Li Shimin waved his hand lightly. "My dear minister, you can rest assured that I have prepared 100 tokens. And each token has my engraved seal. Even if he is a merchant, with this token he will be exempted from the right to kneel in front of officials. And he will also enjoy the right to half the tax exemption on all the properties under his name." Buzz! All the officials' heads exploded. There is such a benefit. 100 tokens. My God! Your Majesty! This old subject has something to report. At this moment, the red-robed official stood up excitedly and shouted. Instantly, everyone couldn't help but look at that person. It was the chief of the Dragoner Temple. Li Shimin waved his hand. "Summon him," the Minister of Agriculture asked. "I'm not talented, but if the people in the imperial court want to save money, do they have this token?" Li Shimin smiled. "Lu Xingwang, I remember that you don't have much money left in your salary, right? However, the Sinangxi temple seems to be a little rich. I won't ask. As long as you save, even if it's just 1 tael of silver, I will give you a token." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Lu Xingwang was so excited that the booklets on his face squeezed his eyes into slits. He hurriedly kowtowed. However, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "But when you save money, the Ministry of Works will check the accounts of all your properties. This is an explanation to me. I know that all of you have properties. After all, you are the pillars of the Tang dynasty. These 100 tokens are a kind of protection for my people. As for your properties, I also have to protect them. If word gets out that I can't even protect the properties of my own officials, won't I become a joke in the world? This? Thank you, Your Majesty." Lu Xingwang hesitated for a moment, but in the end he thanked him excitedly. When everyone saw that Lu Xingwang got a token so easily, they were all envious. One after another, they knelt and begged. What was this? As long as they had this token, it meant that the emperor had acknowledged that all their money would be theirs. This was really money falling from the sky. Previously, all the officials were trembling in fear, afraid that the emperor would be dissatisfied if they earned too much. But now, the emperor had personally said such a thing. Didn't that mean that as long as their money came from a clean source, then? However, among these people, Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and even Qing Yaojin laughed. Idiots, they were all a bunch of idiots. It seemed that this plan didn't need them to act anymore. This Lu Xingwang was really good timing. Which one of the officials present didn't have more than 10,000 taels of silver? If these 100 officials all deposited money in the imperial plantation at the same time, the publicity effect would be incomparable. 100 tokens? that was prepared for these people in the first place. As for the real purpose, in this way, not only would the crisis in Chang'an and the state governments be solved in an instant, but such a butterfly effect would be fully carried out by the officials at all levels. Under the effect, how many businessmen would deposit money in the imperial plantation at this time? Then the emperor would take out their money and lend it out. This cycle would never stop, just like the water wheel in the imperial garden. In the end, the Tang dynasty only paid an overall investment of less than 50 million taels of silver. With this scoop of water, the economic lifeline of the entire Tang dynasty was in the hands of the emperor. It could be seen that Zhang Feng and his brother were terrifying. Li Shimin, Wei Zheng, and the others looked at each other and stood up again. He asked loudly, "I'll ask one last time. Who agrees? Who opposes?" At this time, who would object? Everyone seemed to have gone crazy. They all showed compliments that they had never shown before, knelt on the ground and shouted, "We congratulate the Tang dynasty on its longevity. Congratulations to your majesty, the country will be strong forever." Chapter 216. The Court Meeting. It had always been a place full of crises. It was cruel. It was also cruel. For example, just now. Ho Kan, the Minister of Works, had fallen from power. But his old friends, or those who had a good relationship with him, had forgotten about Ho Kan after hearing about the huge benefits mentioned by the emperor. At this time, everyone was afraid that their entanglements with him would be implicated, so they were all desperately expressing their stance. The closer they were to Ho Kan, the more they swore at this time. It seemed that Ho Kan, who used to be their brother, had become a pile of stinky dog shit at this time. In terms of benefits and official career, they were determined to take a step forward in their official career. And this was also what Li Shimin wanted most. Although he didn't mind killing a few more people, there would always be endless killing waiting for everyone. Therefore, Li Shimin was not far from raising the butcher's knife high for the time being, because it was not time yet. After all, now he had to make a series of preparations for Zhang Feng's coming to the court meeting. The court meeting was over. They were no longer in a daze like they used to be. Every official seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Along the way, they were calculating how much interest they could earn from their assets in a year. They were also calculating what kind of magical use the small tiles that the emperor had mentioned would have in the future. Almost. After the court meeting was over, teams of imperial guards hurriedly posted the notice of the emperor everywhere in Chang'an city. As a result, this matter shook Chang'an city in the shortest time possible. Everyone no longer cared about the price of food and vegetables, and how much money they could earn today. Everyone, whether literate or illiterate, gathered in front of the notice at this time. Those who could read acted as translators at this time, tirelessly telling the people about the so-called cooperative on the notice. At this time, almost all the streets in Chang'an city were empty. The owners of the taverns and restaurants ran away. The hungry diners who were left alone waiting for dinner, or the diners who were about to finish their meal and were about to pay. The diners also ran away. They even forgot to pay the bill. Because this time, the emperor personally issued the imperial edict to announce it to the world. Have you heard? His Majesty announced today that he is going to introduce something called a cooperative, and there will be free vouchers being sent out today. What? I heard that the vouchers can be used as a substitute. They can be as small as 1 copper coin or as large as several hundred taels of silver. Isn't this stuff money? His Majesty really doesn't want a single copper coin and is giving us this? It's true. Go and have a look. Basically, the news has spread like wildfire in Chang'an city. And now, all the bulletin boards in the city are crowded with people. Even the imperial plantation was blocked. Your information is outdated. Just a moment ago, I saw a group of golden-armored chamberlains standing guard at the imperial plantation. They were from the Secretariat, the Ministry of Secretariat, the Ministry of Justice, and the Ministry of Works. It seems like they're about to start distributing some sort of coupons. What? Heavens! Looks like it's true. Let's go. Let's go and have a look too. In an instant, the news spread throughout Chang'an city. Everyone wanted to see what this new and rare thing was. Why would the emperor give them money for free? 2 hours later, it was noon. The rare bell of the Life Transformation Temple rang 9 times. 1 ring meant the new year, 3 rings meant a prayer to heaven. As for the 9 rings of the Life Transformation Temple, that was something that had never happened before. This showed how much importance the emperor attached to this matter. When the bell rang, the officials of the Secretariat first read the imperial edict in front of the imperial plantation. The imperial edict has arrived. Everyone kneel. Whoosh! When everyone heard that, they hurriedly knelt on the ground. The officials of the Secretariat solemnly opened the imperial edict and read it aloud. The emperor's edict states that recently, I feel deeply saddened by the hardships of the people in Chang'an city. I have opened the treasury to show compassion for the people and provide relief to the world. I hope that the people in the world can have clothes to wear and food to eat. The officials of the Secretariat had amazing control over their voices. When it was time to suppress their voices were as low as muffled thunder. When it was time to raise their voices, everyone felt as if they were listening to a dragon's roar from the 9th heaven. Everyone couldn't help but shed tears at the sight of this imperial edict. The imperial edict was read out. Everyone cheered in unison. Long live the emperor! The emperor is wise. The officials of the Secretariat waited for the crowd to stop shouting before the officials of the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Works read out the edict. Then, the official of the Ministry of Works waved his hand and said, "The emperor empathizes with the people. Those who have saved money will receive a token from the emperor to ensure the safety of your wealth." What? Everyone exploded. Was there such a good thing? The ministers who were rushing over after hearing the news all spat out a mouthful of blood when they heard this. Fang Xianling, you tricked me. This was something that the emperor had given to them. How could they give it to the people? Immediately, someone hurriedly shouted, Zhu Yen of the Taichung Temple has saved 5,732 taels of silver. Taichung of the Ministry of Justice has saved 3,910 taels of silver. Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Appointments. Chapter 217. On the city walls of Chang'an City, Li Shimin, Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui, who were in disguise, looked at the entrance of the imperial plantation and smiled. After such a long period of intense planning, they finally saw results at this moment. They had completely improved Zhang Feng's plan last night. Li Shimin and Wei Zheng had thoroughly analyzed the situation of the officials in the imperial court and combined it with Zhang Sun Wuji's investigation of Ho Ken to come up with this plan. However, the effect was very obvious. Even Li Shimin was shocked. So this is my subject. If it weren't for Brother Zhang Feng's plan, I wouldn't have known that my officials are so rich. In just half an hour, these officials have saved almost a few 100 million yuan. Ha! Li Shimin smiled bitterly, but he also smiled like a wise man. When everyone heard this, they stood up and congratulated. Congratulations, Your Majesty! What's there to congratulate? Why don't you want to save some money? This? Your Majesty, you know our family background. We don't have the money to save. Wei Zheng blushed and said. Ha! Li Shimin also laughed when he heard this. When this is over, I will remember to give you the money. After all, this idea was thought of by our brother, Zhang Feng. Thank you, Your Majesty. When the 4 of them heard this, they hurriedly thanked him. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, We're out of the palace. Don't do this again. Be more natural. Only then did everyone return to normal. They looked at the situation below the city walls and thought. The emperor had said that after this matter was over, there would be a reward. Did that mean that they could forget about their previous mistakes? Moreover, they had been involved in this matter from the beginning to the end. They definitely knew how much wealth would be accumulated after this matter was over. When that time came, money would just be a number to them. How are you going to spend tens of millions? I'm just asking what you're going to buy. Thinking about the future, a smile appeared on everyone's face. Lao Li, are you guys here to watch the show too? At this moment, a familiar voice caused Li Shimin to be slightly stunned. But in the next moment, his expression changed as he turned around and laughed. Ha, how could I forget you? Brother Zhang Feng, are you here to join in the fun? The person who came was Zhang Feng, who had come to join in the fun. How could Zhang Feng not know about such a sensational event in Chang'an city? When he first heard this, Zhang Feng thought there was something wrong with his ears. Then, he grabbed the old scholar who was running back and forth. Only then did he realize that the emperor had investigated the Minister of Works in such a short amount of time. He also didn't know what kind of ability the emperor had used to get so many officials to agree to this matter. Now it seems this emperor was really not an ordinary person. This was to trap all the officials in a tight spot. The key point was that this group of people still didn't know and foolishly thought that this was the emperor's favor. They didn't know that if they made a mistake, then the money in the emperor's pocket would still belong to them. It seemed that these officials were attracted by the interest and the token, but they didn't know that they had already fallen into the trap. Brilliant! That's King amazing. Zhang Feng looked at Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui, who were somewhat unfamiliar, and asked doubtfully, "These two old gentlemen are... Oh, look at me, I'm confused. Come, brother Zhang Feng, let me introduce you." Wei Jing took the initiative to volunteer. He pulled Zhang Feng and pointed at Fang Xianling, who was squinting and observing him, and said, "This old guy is Lao Li's butler. You can call him the accountant. That one's surname is Du, you can call him Old Du." Hearing this, Zhang Feng clasped his fist. I've heard Lao Li talk about his butler before. It's really better to meet him in person than to hear about him. This temperament, one look and I can tell that he's a scholar. Zhang Feng's name resounded like thunder in Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui's ears. At this time, seeing the real person and being flattered so politely by Zhang Feng, Fang Xianling was very happy. He hurriedly bowed like a Confucian scholar and said, "I've often heard about Brother Zhang Feng's matters from the old master. Your deeds are really unprecedented." "Haha, old gentleman, you flatter me." After saying this, Zhang Feng grabbed Du Ruhui's hand and said excitedly, "This must be the old Du that Lao Li and Old Sun often talk about, right?" Actually, when had he ever heard them talk about him? They were just being polite. But this was the first time they met. And he was someone who was together with Lao Li. For Zhang Feng, who had always been friendly, this was not a problem at all. After looking at the city wall with Wei Zheng and the others for a while and seeing the patrolling city guards coming over, they hurriedly slipped down the city wall and came to Zhang Feng's little pub. Zhang Feng familiarly entered the kitchen and started cooking. Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui looked at the calligraphy on the wall and were shocked. Although the words were not beautiful, it was still okay. But the artistic conception in the poem, that was... At this time, Zhang Feng came over with wine and dishes. The two of them did not ask much. Zhang Feng poured wine and then clinked glasses with everyone. He looked at Du Ruhui and said, "Old Du, why do I feel that you look so familiar? You seem to be someone." Chapter 218. Zhang Feng's words instantly made Li Shimin and the others tense up. Li Shimin seriously suspected that Zhang Feng had found out about them when they knelt down just now. If that was the case, it would be difficult to handle. Li Shimin was hesitating whether to tell Zhang Feng his real identity. Once Zhang Feng knew about it, he might be tactful and lose his only friend. After communicating with Wei Zheng and the others through their eyes, and after Wei Zheng and Fang Xianling confirmed it, Li Shimin was as nervous as if he was facing an imperial court for the first time. He was even more nervous than before. Brother Zhang Feng, in fact, Old Du's real identity is Du Kong? Is it? Haha. Old Du's name is Du Kong. Haha. Am I right? What Li Shimin was about to say was made extremely uncomfortable by Zhang Feng's joke. Du Ruhui's face suddenly froze. He was the most nervous one. If Zhang Feng guessed everyone's identity from him, then, although the emperor would not say anything, he would have to bear the guilt of losing his only friend for the rest of his life. But what was unexpected was that Zhang Feng, this fellow, actually managed to make everyone tense up. The moment he spoke, Du Ruhui had the urge to beat him up. Damn it! What the hell is Du Kong? Was this guy talking about his wine jar in another way? After a short period of shock, Li Shimin and the others came to their senses. On one hand, it was because Zhang Feng did not recognize them, and on the other hand, Du Ruhui had a new nickname. Ha! Old Du, this time, your nickname has become famous. Du Kong. Brother Zhang Feng, I Old Fong, am really awesome. You're like this. This is the first time I've seen Old Du with such a wonderful expression. Fang Xianling held his stomach and gave Zhang Feng a thumbs up. Even Wei Jing picked up his wine and said seriously to Du Ruhui, come on, Du Kong, let's drink. Ha. Cheers. Du Ruhui's eyes were red. But he also knew that Zhang Feng was joking. He gritted his teeth, stared fiercely at these guys, and suddenly drank a big mouthful of wine. But after drinking a bowl of wine, Du Ruhui was dumbfounded. He had drunk Zhang Feng's wine before, but when he looked at the remaining green liquid at the bottom of the bowl and felt that there was still a trace of bamboo fragrance in the dry and cracked wine in his mouth, he couldn't help but be shocked. Brother Zhang, this wine, Old Du. Didn't I say you looked like someone? What do you think? Look, doesn't he look like old Shen who drinks like his life? While talking, Zhang Feng put his hand on Du Ruhui's neck and said, Old Du, I was just joking today, but I didn't expect you guys to really take a joke. Fine. I'll compensate you with a bowl of wine. How about it? Good. Ha, my brother is so bright. Come, I'll drink with you. Haha, this is our Lao Li's brother. Come on, old way. Don't just eat, drink. Old Fong, come on, let's drink. Let's drink. Everyone played around for a while. The quarrel made the few half-grown old men put aside poetry, books, etiquette, and the purpose of putting rules first. Because they all knew that in terms of rules and knowledge, the few of them here did not know more than Zhang Feng alone. Thus, he decided to play around with it openly. It was to put an end to the tension during this period of time. Du Ruhui fished out a 1-meter-long pig intestine from the basin and chewed while holding a bowl of wine. While Zhang Feng and Li Shimin were playing finger-guessing games, he began to eat fiercely. At first, he was a little disdainful of this basin of pig intestine, but when he saw that Wei Jing had been eating since he came in, and his stomach was full of the wine he had forced down today, he did not care anymore. He used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of pig liver and ate it. However, after the first bite, Du Ruhui went crazy. He did not even use his chopsticks and picked up the meat with his hands to eat. He knew that it would be difficult to eat such delicacies outside of this place. Moreover, after eating the delicacies brought back by Li Shimin, how could ordinary food satisfy his stomach? Du Ruhui couldn't help but wonder if he should ask for a secret recipe when he left. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to keep thinking about it all day long. Presumably, Brother Zhang Feng would not care about it, right? Yo, there's a foodie here? Li Shimin, who was obviously drunk, grabbed Du Ruhui's collar and pulled him up. Come, old Du. Aren't you the god of wine? I really can't drink anymore. Brother Zhang Feng, let Lao Li rest for a while. I'll do it. Just as Li Shimin was about to make a slip of the tongue, Du Ruhui's hair stood on end. He stuffed the pig kidney in his hand into Li Shimin's mouth and slapped Zhang Feng's shoulder with his greasy hand, roaring, Come! Today, I'll show you what the god of wine is. But, come! Whoever collapses first is the grandson. Hey! Old Wei, you're getting excited too, aren't you? Come, whoever collapses first is the grandson. Chapter 219. The night was very short. Especially in the early summer night. The mosquitoes here seemed to be a little afraid of the small tavern. It was rare that they didn't enter here. In the end, these top-notch figures of the Great Tang who were competing in drinking all fell asleep snoring before the hour of the night had even arrived. This sleep made Wei Shuyu very worried. What should he do? What should he do? He had heard everything clearly when he was outside. Everyone else was fine, but the emperor, how could he? Send him back to the palace? He might be beaten by the empress. He didn't dare to bear the crime of failing to protect the emperor. For the first time, Wei Shuyu felt that being a shabby Jinwu guard was a hard job. He was so worried that he squatted on the steps in front of the tavern and pulled his hair like a pig's mane. But this was not a good way. He still had to go back and report. You come here. Wei Shuyu waved his hand in annoyance and called a Jinwu guard over. Go to the palace immediately and report everything here. You and you, all of you, squat in front of Lao Tzu and pretend to be dead. Guard this tavern to the death. The orders were issued one after another. Wei Shuyu looked at the tavern and turned to enter it. Looking at the leftovers on the table and the food that still smelled of wine and meat, he was eager to eat. But when he thought of the important responsibility now, he couldn't help but tear down the counter and find some soft and furs in the tavern. He even tore down Zhang Feng's bed and made a simple bed on the floor of the tavern. He put Li Shimin and the others on the bed one by one. As for Zhang Feng, Wei Shuyu squatted in front of the table and looked at this legendary figure. Wei Shuyu touched his chin and murmured, "He doesn't have any other ability. Didn't he still drink until he collapsed?" "That's it?" Wei Shuyu curled his lips in disdain. Looking at the broken or not broken wine jars on the ground and the wine jars on the table, there were only 6 in total. 5 people drank 6 jars of wine and all of them collapsed? Wasn't this too cowardly? If this was in the hands of Zhang Sun and the other bastards, this would be enough for them to rinse their mouths. Even if it was true, why fight for the title of God of Wine? Wei Shuyu felt a little disdainful. After wandering around the tavern and blowing out all the oil lamps, he wandered back and forth in the tavern. The aroma of the meat and the aroma of the wine almost drove him crazy. It will take about 2 hours to get to and from the palace. I only drank a little to satisfy my cravings. Others, I don't think anyone saw it, right? Wei Shuyu listened quietly at the door with a guilty conscience. Then, she tiptoed to the wine cabinet and took out a wine jug that was slightly bigger than the others. With a slap, she removed the seal. Wei Shuyu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she smelled the pungent aroma of the wine. He raised his head and carefully took a sip. Spicy. The wine was like a knife as it flowed down his throat and into his body like a ball of fire. Awesome! This is King wine. Wei Shuyu sighed happily. The strong smell of the wine made him feel as if he was breathing out a ball of fire in the dark. At this moment, how could Wei Shuyu care so much? He raised his head and poured the wine into the wine jug. However, what he didn't see was that on top of the wine jar, under the moonlight, the word alcohol was faintly visible. Wei Shuyu squatted in the corner and drank mouthful after mouthful. The more he drank, the more he felt that the wine was fragrant. He finally understood why the emperor and the others would act like children for this thing. Damn it, I only drank a few mouthfuls and I'm already dizzy? What kind of wine is this? Wei Shuyu completely let go. In order to study what kind of wine it was, he forgot where he was and what his duty was. On the other side, the chamberlain of Jin Wu passed through the secret doors of the palace and hurriedly appeared in Zhang Sun Wuji's bedroom. Report. Urgent report. The chamberlain of Jin Wu requests an audience with the empress. Under normal circumstances, the chamberlain of Jin Wu, or any man other than the eunuchs, would enter the harem. At this moment, Zhang Sun Wu Go, who was anxiously waiting for Li Shimin, suddenly felt that something was wrong after hearing this voice. She waved her hand and said, "Go in." The next moment, the chamberlain of Jin Wu Go entered the bedroom with his head lowered. In front of a screen, the chamberlain of Jin Wu Go hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground. When Zhang Sun Wu Go saw the chamberlain of Jin Wu Go's clothes, he couldn't help but be shocked. "Where is the emperor?" "The emperor is drunk in a small tavern." "What?" Zhang Sun Wu Go was completely furious. "Bastard! Who accompanied the emperor?" "I asked Prime Minister Wei, Lord Fong, and Lord Du, then why didn't they stop him?" What are you doing? Why didn't you stop the emperor when he was drinking?" Empress Zhang Sun Wu Go was completely furious. The chamberlain of Jin Wu Go was trembling all over. Reporting to the empress, the lords are all drunk. Now, Captain Wei Shuyu is personally guarding the place. What? They're all drunk? Good. Empress Zhang Sun Wu Go's pretty face was about to contort. She shouted angrily, "Order the imperial guards and the chamberlain of Jin Wu Go to mobilize all of them to protect the emperor. If anything happens to the emperor, all 9 generations of the emperor's family will be executed." The chamberlain of Jin Wu Go's voice changed when he heard this. He hurriedly cupped his fist and roared mournfully. Chapter 220. All of a sudden, the entire palace began to move. Squads of imperial guards and imperial guards swarmed out of the palace in the dark. Under the lead of the imperial guard who delivered the message, they arrived outside the tavern. The one leading them was Yuqi Jingda's son, Yuqi Baolin. Where are they? Yuqi Baolin's clanging armor clanged as he grabbed the golden guard's collar and asked in astonishment. I don't know, but before the captain sent me to the palace to deliver the message, hundreds of our brothers were here. Yuqi Baolin tossed the golden guard far away, shook his muscular body, and swept his gaze across the dark corners like a pair of daggers. How could he not know the people hiding in the dark? It seems that Wei Shuyu is really something. He must have put in a lot of effort to turn a squad of 300 into this. But what about that bastard? Was he killed? Yuqi Baolin waved his hand. In an instant, a large group of imperial guards and imperial guards surrounded Zhang Feng's tavern. He waved his hand and said, "Everyone, with the tavern as the center, clear out everyone within 100 steps. If there are any suspicious people, kill them." Sir. Everyone left. Yuqi Baolin's footsteps were heavy as he pushed open the door to the dark tavern. Instantly, countless torches lit up the entire tavern. In the next moment, Yuqi Baolin's brain stopped working. In front of him, the emperor and Wei Zheng were hugging each other as they slept on a bed made of wooden planks. Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui were rolling on the floor covered in vomit. Even the emperor's face was covered in dirt. Wei Shuyu was leaning against the wall of the tavern, hugging a large wine jar and laughing like a fool. From time to time, vomit would overflow from the corner of his mouth. Yuqi Baolin's entire body was covered in a layer of white sweat. Gulp. Swallowing hard, Yuqi Baolin hurriedly shooed away the people who were about to enter the tavern. Even if Yuqi Baolin was an idiot, he now knew that he had really gotten himself into trouble this time. If anyone were to find out about this, the imperial family's reputation would be tarnished. The empress would kill. At this thought, Yuqi Baolin waved his hand and roared, "Everyone, retreat 30 steps. Without my permission, no one is allowed to enter the tavern." These imperial guards were the sons of his father's subordinates. Most of them were descendants of generals and ministers. If they were killed by the enraged empress. Yuqi Baolin took the torch from one of his men and lit up the tavern. He waved his hand and said, "Prepare the carriage. Get the carriage ready. Are you all idiots?" Then he hurriedly carried Li Shimin and the others and placed them on the carriage one by one. Looking at Wei Shuyu, who was leaning against the corner of the tavern and laughing like a fool, her chest covered in vomit, Yuqi Baolin was furious. He viciously kicked her in the face while she was still laughing like a fool. After making arrangements for the emperor and the others, Yuqi Baolin roared, "Men, drag this bastard away." Reporting. "Lieutenant Yuqi, we've discovered a secret Turkic stronghold next door. What should we do?" "What? F***CK. Yuqi Baolin had been preparing to clear the streets and escort the emperor and the others back to the palace. But when he heard this, his legs almost gave out from under him. F***CK. There's a secret Turkic stronghold right next door to this tavern? F***CK. What if F***CKU? Then what are we waiting for? Lao Tzu has already wiped them out. Drag them back and interrogate them. F***CKU. Are you an idiot? F***CK off. F***C it's over. F***King hell, what sin have I committed? Why did I have to work tonight? Yuqi Baolin looked up at the sky and sighed. He wanted nothing more than to slap his own mouth. This time, even if nothing happened to the emperor, he would not be able to escape the beating he would receive when he returned. Even if it was a secret Turkic stronghold right next to the emperor, he would still die. Yuqi Baolin looked at the darkness sympathetically. He could not help but roar, "Stop hiding. Get the F***king hell out of Lao Tzu. Tie these idiots up for Lao Tzu. Lieutenant Yuqi, what's the meaning of this? We're under orders." Slap. Some of the imperial guards protested and struggled, but Yuqi Baolin slapped them with the back of his hand and they fainted. He really wanted to slap these idiots until they fainted. That might save their lives. However, while wishes were beautiful, reality was cruel. Yuqi Baolin glanced at Zhang Feng, who had slipped from the table to the floor and sighed. "Kid, what magic do you have that even the emperor is willing to treat you as an equal?" The gong at 1 in the morning slowly sounded. However, the security of the imperial city was suddenly strengthened countless times in this silence and darkness. It was to the extent that after Cheng Yaojin received the secret order from the Dao Empress, he personally led his subordinates into battle and guarded the emperor and the others as they entered the Taiji Palace. In the palace, Zhang Sun looked at Wei Shuyu, who had been awakened by buckets of water, and shouted with a fierce expression, "Wei Shuyu, do you admit to your crimes?" Chapter 221. Wei Shuyu's mind was in a mess. He felt like his head was about to explode. He clearly remembered that he had only drunk a little wine. Had Lao Tzu's tolerance deteriorated? However, at this moment, he suddenly heard a voice that terrified him. The Empress? Wasn't the Empress in the palace? What was going on? Wei Shuyu felt as if he was being held up and Yuchi Baolin was whispering something into his ears. Zhang Sun stared at Wei Shuyu speechlessly and waved her hand angrily. "Tie him to the pillar at the door and let him sober up." "Yuchi Baolin, you said that there's a secret Turkic stronghold next to the tavern?" Yuchi Baolin hurriedly replied, "Yes, Your Highness. I've already captured the Turkic stronghold and it's underground. I don't care what methods you use, but you must investigate this matter before His Majesty wakes up tomorrow." And old General Cheng. When Yuchi Baolin's men had summoned Cheng Yaojin had already found out about the entire situation. Now that he heard the Empress calling him, Cheng Yaojin gritted his teeth and feigned ignorance. "Your Majesty, let me ask you, are you sure you've already removed the Imperial Guards next to the tavern?" "I did arrange for some men, but His Majesty was afraid that it wasn't safe and personally replaced the Imperial Guards. Then what's going on?" Zhang Sun slammed the table angrily and shouted, "Then tell me, what should I do if something happens to His Majesty tonight? What if the Turkic people next to the tavern find out about His Majesty's identity tonight?" "Your Highness, please calm down." Cheng Yaojin threw everything to the emperor. "I don't know about this. Perhaps this Turkic stronghold only appeared recently. We didn't hear anything about it when we investigated in the past. Hey, idiot Yuchi, why don't you King tell me, did you find anything useful?" Cheng Yaojin was anxious. He kicked Yuchi Baolin's buttocks viciously and roared. Yuchi Baolin grimaced in pain from the kick. However, he didn't dare to lose his temper and said hurriedly, "Your Majesty, General Cheng, I've asked the people around. A man surnamed He who had met Zhang Feng said that Zhang Feng had noticed this stronghold as early as half a month ago. And I also know that this stronghold usually starts its activities as a gambling house after midnight. Since the establishment of the cooperative, very few people have been active on the ground in this stronghold. So, what happened tonight, probably didn't spread out. What do you mean by probably? As the commander of the Imperial Guards, you are responsible for this matter. Tomorrow, after His Majesty hands down the punishment, you will go to the Ministry of Justice to receive 30 strikes." Empress Zhang Sun left angrily with a wave of her sleeve. After all, the emperor still needed to be looked after. It was only after the empress left that Yuchi Baolin and Cheng Yaojin heaved a sigh of relief. "Damn it, you little bastard, why didn't you inform Lao Tzu about this?" Cheng Yaojin grabbed Yuchi Baolin's ear and roared. It was so painful that Yuchi Baolin almost burst into tears. He was already very unlucky. Now that Cheng Yaojin was venting his anger, what else could he say? What did he dare to say? He didn't know what His Majesty would do when he learned about this matter tomorrow. Right now, he had already recorded 30 strikes of the paddle. Damn it, if His Majesty woke up tomorrow, damn it, General Cheng, stop pulling, it's going to break. If you want to blame someone, blame that bastard Wei Shuyu. It's all his fault. If he didn't inform Her Majesty first and cause her to be furious, how would I know about this? Her Majesty was furious at that time. She thought that since Wei Shuyu was around, nothing would happen. Who knew that bastard would steal wine and drink it? If you want to blame someone, blame him. Cheng Yaojin kicked Yuchi Baolin hard and let go, causing Yuchi Baolin to fall flat on his face. "Tomorrow? Tomorrow, we'll all have to wait to be beaten. Cheng Yaojin said something ambiguous and left in a hurry. Yuchi Baolin was left in a mess. The next morning, Zhang Feng shook his head like a bucket and groggily got up from the floor. When he opened his eyes, he was dumbfounded. Was this still the tidy and shabby little tavern? Was this AF King Thief? He saw that the counter had been dismantled and thrown haphazardly on the floor. The tables and chairs were still intact, but, damn it, who could tell me who drank Lao Tzu's wine? Damn it, that's going to kill me. Zhang Feng squatted on the floor and looked at the half-full jar of wine, rubbing his head hard. He remembered that the counter was still intact at the end last night. Could it be that in the end, old Li and the others got drunk and took the alcohol out to drink? But Lao Tzu's quilt? What was going on? In the end, Zhang Feng put his hands together and prayed, "Gods and Buddhas, please protect Lao Li and the others and don't drink to death." Chapter 222. The Scorching Sun. Especially the scorching sun in June. Behind the horizon, he tried his best to spew out the anger that he had been suppressing for an entire night. It was as if he wanted to barbecue the earth like an iron plate. The palace. It was quiet. Every palace maid and eunuch looked as if their buttocks were on fire. They lowered their heads and hurriedly ran for their lives. Especially the palace maids and eunuchs who were washing the floor in front of Taiji Palace. At this moment, even the slightest sound of footsteps would make them tremble. Cough, cough, cough. Cough, cough, cough. Wei Shuyu slowly woke up with a hoarse cough. However, his head felt as if it had been kicked by a horse's hoof. At this moment, he really wanted to split his head open and dig out the broken things inside. "Someone, bring a bowl of water for me." Wei Shuyu habitually yelled, but everyone treated it like a fart. No one paid any attention to her. When Wei Shuyu felt that her hands and feet were trapped, she opened her eyes in a daze. The familiar plaque of Taiji Palace, the familiar palace maids, but who the hell told Lao Tzu why was Lao Tzu tied to the pillar? Who the hell tied Lao Tzu to the pillar? Hey, are you King Deaf? CK. After shouting a few times, Wei Shuyu's throat hurt even more. Seeing that everyone was ignoring him, he finally realized that something was wrong. What did Lao Tzu do last night? That's right. Didn't I accompany His Majesty to the tavern yesterday? What the hell, why am I here? Finally, Wei Shuyu panicked. At this moment, a playful voice came from behind him. Yo, you're awake? Master Wei, it's Master Wei. You're drunk and still want Lao Tzu to serve you. Awesome. Zhangsun, dressed in a white robe, slowly chewed a weed in his mouth. He looked at Wei Shuyu and shook his head. Looking at him, Wei Shuyu really wanted to tear his mouth apart. But now, he had to admit defeat. Otherwise, who the hell would know what was going on? Zhangsun, what's going on? Whoa, don't you know what's going on? Zhang Sun moved closer to Wei Shuyu as if he had discovered something interesting. How was the wine last night? Even better than the wine in Windward? Right. Wei Shuyu remembered. Last night, he had been guarding the drunk emperor, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and his father. In the end, he seemed to have found some good wine and then, gulp. On Wei Shuyu's forehead, large drops of cold sweat could not help but emerge. With a sobbing tone, he asked, "Master Zhongs, please stop fooling around. Tell me what's going on. Also, what happened to His Majesty and the others?" "You only think of His Majesty now? Grandson Wei, you've King caused Lao Tzu so much trouble." At this moment, Yuchi Baolin, who was being carried, walked over with his buttocks sticking out in pain. Looking at Wei Shuyu made him angry. 30 planks. Not even a single one. Damn it, he would not be able to walk for at least half a month. Damn it, it's all this grandson's fault. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Yuchi Baolin pointed at Wei Shuyu and shouted, "Damn it, you can't drink horse piss. When was yesterday? Were you a King servant? A servant drinking? Why did you King hide and drink? Are you King stupid? Why did you call someone back to tell the Empress? Damn it. If it weren't for you, would Lao Tzu have been beaten?" Yuchi Baolin felt extremely wronged. He pointed at Wei Shuyu, who was still in a daze, and scolded him. Wei Shuyu was dumbfounded. There was only one last sentence left in his mind. Damn it, it's over. This time, it's all F***ing over. Thud thud thud. However, at this moment, a series of clanking sounds rang out. Yuchi Baolin was so frightened that he hurriedly urged the eunuchs carrying him to run away. Zhang Sun also picked up his spear from the ground and stood in front of Wei Shuyu with a solemn expression, looking straight ahead. Brother, please restrain your grief. On this day next year, I'll burn paper money for you. By the Empress' decree, I'm bringing this guilty official, Wei Shuyu, for an audience. It's over. When Wei Shuyu heard this, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. Seeing this scene, Zhang Sunchong was stupefied. Damn it. Was the wine too strong? Or was this grandson too good at pretending? Damn it. But he did not dare to think too much. The Empress' personal guards were here. How could he dare to fart? He obediently slipped away after they took Wei Shuyu away. He did not dare to provoke the Empress at this time, even though she was his aunt, because his aunt liked to take revenge on her relatives on the other side. Outside the bedchamber, Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui knelt in a row. They hung their heads and looked at the group of palace maids and eunuchs in a daze. These were all people who used to be so arrogant. The sun did not rise from the west today. What was going on? Why were they all kneeling outside the emperor's bedchamber? But they did not dare to ask. They were afraid. At this moment, Zhang Sun Wuji came out of the emperor's bedchamber with a strange expression. He squatted on the ground and looked at the four people. He shook his head and sighed. The Empress summoned you. Everywhere, awesome. Chapter 223. In the Emperor's chamber, Li Shimin rubbed his swollen head. Even though the palace maids were massaging his head and the imperial physicians were administering acupuncture, the aftereffects of being drunk still made him feel nauseous. At this moment, Empress Zhongsun was sitting on one side, staring coldly at the four of them. Prime Minister Wei, you're an old man. Tell me, how should this crime be punished? How could Wei Jing not know this? But how should he treat it? He had a headache. When he was outside, he heard that Wei Shuyu had been tied to a pillar outside Taiji Palace by the Empress for a whole night because of her negligence of duty last night. Until now, he still didn't know what she had done. Your Majesty, this, Prime Minister Wei and the others, Li Shimin wanted to say something. But when he saw Zhang Sun Wugo's cold face, he could only shrink his neck and stop talking. This scene made Wei Zheng and the others feel a toothache. The only person who could plead for mercy now didn't dare to speak. What could they do? Wei Zheng couldn't help but grit his teeth and bow. Your Majesty, it was this old subject's fault for being greedy yesterday and causing His Majesty to be in danger. According to the laws of the Great Tang, we should be beheaded. Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and Zhang Sun Wuji, who was standing on the side and pretending not to see, couldn't help but tremble. This old man, damn you, you still have the temper of a donkey at this time? Can't you say something soft? Good. Zhang Sun Wuji, you're the Minister of Justice. What do you think about this? Zhang Sun Wugo was really angry. If they had just given in, this matter would have been over. After all, the juniors had already been punished, and all she wanted was an explanation. The emperor was hungover, and there was a Turkic spy by his side. She wanted an explanation so that she could deal with the mouths of those in the royal court. But she didn't expect Wei Jing, this stubborn old man, to be so stubborn at this time. Zhang Sun Wuji was very depressed. He cupped his fists and said, reporting to the emperor and empress, if this matter was under normal circumstances, it would indeed be beheaded according to the law. But this is different. Oh. How is it different? Li Shimin asked with a wave of his hand before Zhang Sun and Wugo could speak. However, he had forgotten about the silver needles on the back of his hand. When he waved his hand, he instantly felt an intense pain, causing the corner of his mouth to twitch. Zhang Sun Wugo glared fiercely at Li Shimin. Reporting to your Majesty, Prime Minister Wei and the others are accompanying His Majesty on an errand. Moreover, they are going to a tavern to meet Brother Zhang Feng. Drinking is inevitable. Moreover, they are here to thank Brother Zhang Feng for his advice, which helped His Majesty take control of the economic lifeline of the Tang dynasty. How can we not congratulate him on such a happy occasion? Seeing Zhang Sun, Wu Go frowned. Zhang Sun Wuji sighed inwardly. Old guys, you have to remember this favor for Lao Tzu. Thinking of this, he said again, this is a happy occasion. As the saying goes, people are in high spirits during happy events, so it's inevitable to drink too much. Moreover, the emperor has already arranged everything. Who would have thought that Wei Shuyu would get drunk while on duty? This is the crux of the problem. Hearing this, Wei Zheng's eyebrows twitched. Valspan, do you want to kill your father? Drinking on duty, and with such an important task, you actually got drunk. Wei Zheng's vision darkened, and his whole body shook. Li Shimin glanced at Wei Zheng. Seeing that Zhang Sun Wugo was still a little angry, he couldn't help but comfort her. Empress, this is Zhen's mistake. Zhen forgot that we were outside the palace, and this time, we didn't go to see Zhang Feng. We met Zhang Feng's brother by chance at the city gate, and Zhang Feng met Prime Minister Du and Prime Minister Fong for the first time, so your Majesty doesn't even care about your own life. You just want to drink until you're drunk? This, Empress, aren't you fine? How do you expect this concubine to deal with the imperial harem? How will His Majesty answer to the court officials? Has His Majesty thought about all this? The anger that Zhang Sun Wugo had already suppressed surged up once more. Do you know? Just next to the tavern, there's an important Turkic stronghold. If Yuqi Baolin didn't go early, think about the consequences. What do you want this concubine to do? Wu, as she spoke, Zhang Sun Wugo actually started crying. At this moment, Li Shimin's expression suddenly changed. He asked, Zhang Sun Wuji, what's going on? Replying to His Majesty, when Yuqi Baolin rushed to the scene last night, Wei Shuyu had already deployed a large number of golden guards to hide outside the tavern, but didn't screen the surroundings. In the end, they found an important Turkic stronghold next to Zhang Feng's. The underground room was luxuriously decorated and couldn't have been completed overnight. Buzz? Zhang Sun Wuji explained in detail. Li Shimin's head completely exploded. At this moment, he finally understood why Zhang Feng was so eager to drive Zhang Sun Wuji away that day. There were Turkic spies living next to him. No wonder Zhang Feng said such strange things that day. At this thought, Li Shimin was furious. Wei Zheng, do you know your crime? Wei Zheng was dumbfounded. As a supervisor of the secretarial department, you often go to the tavern with me. Didn't you carefully investigate the situation around the tavern? His Majesty, this matter was carried out by the Ministry of Justice and the Imperial Guards. This old official, you're still quibbling? Li Shimin hurriedly winked to hint at him. He shouted angrily, Guards! Throw Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui into the prison and wait for punishment. Guards, Wei Shuyu has neglected her duties. She will be flogged 30 times and be relieved of her position as the captain of the Golden Guards. Take her away. They were dumbfounded. They relied on their monthly salary to survive. Now that they were all exempted, they hurriedly shouted, Your Majesty, this is terrible.